the February 20th Planning Board meeting and public hearings. It is 6:04 p.m. We're being recorded, and I guess we're not going out live?
It should be done on YouTube.
On YouTube, live on YouTube. Wow. Okay, so first up, our administrative items, Rita Lane Extension, file 19-001C, as-built plan.
Last week, the select board received a petition to accept the second section of Rita Lane, and they have forwarded this plan to the planning board. What we're doing here is that the planning board has 45 days to return comments to the select board, so we'd have to return comments by the March 19th planning board meeting. This is just for a non-binding recommendation on behalf of the planning board. So some overview of what we've done so far in the planning office with this plan is that we've had SW Cole review the plan, and the as-built conform to the approved subdivision plans, and that was file 19-001C. Per the town's bylaws, we have to have the roadway tested for its gravel foundation, which has been tested and it meets Mass DPW standards. And Derek Mello from SW Cole is currently following up on the surface course testing of that road. So we don't have anything for that yet. So that piece is outstanding. Also to note, in the report that we have from SW Cole, there are a couple of outstanding items that need to be addressed before this road moves on to final acceptance. And these would be seeding the bare areas of the roadway shoulders, installing necessary or reinstalling necessary signage to town highway standards. It was noted that there was a street sign that wasn't installed to town highway standards, and one area or one intersection is missing a stop sign. And installing oil and debris traps in the catch basins. And so the planning board, as I said, has 45 days to return comments to the select board. Any comments on this?
A couple of things come to my mind. One is Rita Lane. I really don't have a problem with suggesting that the town accept this road with the minor things that the engineer says. But the road that it connects to, White Oak Run, is not a town road. And I think that could or could not be a problem. So I don't know. Apparently, I think the town thought it was a town road because they've been maintaining it and they have paved it. But I think there's no survey of the right-of-way for this road, and it was historically a private road. So I don't know what other people think, but I guess the path of least resistance is to make no comment. But
so how can you have a town road connect to a private road?
it is already.
That's
the first part of Rita Lane was accepted at town meeting I don't know how long ago. But I think the town town hall has been made aware that it's not, and they I think had the opportunity a year or two ago to put forward White Oak Run as to be accepted, but it had to be surveyed, and they didn't have the money to survey it. So that's what I know.
I never knew that. And so it's not part of Dartmouth either.
Part of it goes over the Dartmouth line, but I think Westport has been losing ownership of it.
We have some files that show the roadway layout partially in the town of Dartmouth. So, yeah, it is. It's, you know, it's right there on the municipal border. So part of it is located. Part of the roadway is located in Dartmouth.
We have a list of all the boundary roads, and so in other words, Dartmouth, we both own it, but there's a list on who maintains which road. And I actually just came across this because I was looking at Beaton Road and Highland Ave and all of those, and they came on it. And so it really, we got to fix this problem because we're going to be, I don't think we can accept the extension. Even the other one was done in error, so I think we need to accept the whole thing and send it to town meeting. Now the extension, when did we approve that subdivision?
That was approved in 2015, I think.
Okay, so it's
Just
been
when
a
we were
long
looking at
time.
earlier today.
The extension,
Oh, the extension.
yeah. That
That
was,
I'm not sure.
that was approved sooner than that, I think. I mean-
It might say on these plans.
So the first piece of Reeder Road is a public way, and now we're extending that, but it doesn't connect to a public way.
Right. So, and the other interesting thing is the petitioners, I don't know how many there are, 13?
They're all Carrigs.
A lot of them are Carrigs, and none of them live on Rita Lane. So that's odd as well.
Rita Lane was accepted May of 2015.
At town meeting?
Huh?
At town meeting?
It says, okay, accepted, yes.
Now, when was the extension approved? When the subdivision control to be built?
The case was heard in 2019. The decision was issued. Let me pull it up.
And I don't think it really matters when it was done, because
But did we
what
bond
they
it?
connected to was a town road, so.
So the decision date was March of 2019.
I mean, when did we release lots?
Well, the aerial view shows that all those lots have houses on them now.
So this was approved probably in 2020? Or late 2019?
The extension was approved in March 2019.
It had to be in a public meeting, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, correct.
I mean, did we bond it? Did we take money for inspections? Did we release money?
I have to find the form to you.
I think we did all that. We had to, because I know Cole inspected it before we released it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
But I know they just topped cost it like last year. I mean,
yeah, no, I think once the binder was down and the drainage was in, we had a Cole estimate, and I don't know what the status of that account is, but we did have an estimate. And these,
I mean,
they
can we
were
see,
doing
if they
inspection.
just topped it now, I mean, it should have been, when was that released? The final on it, before the top course went on? I don't know, I think we need to recommend that White Oak Run gets accepted along with this street. before we get
Yeah,
chapter
yeah,
90 problems.
I think we could recommend that, but where are they gonna get the money to do the as-built?
There was a surety of $87,500 in 2021, May of 2021.
So we still had a balance of whatever we, that's the balance that we had.
Do we still have money?
There's a covenant.
Because I would think going back to 2015, when that one got approved, they would have, you know, in the approval part, when they were coming before us, we should note that it wasn't an accepted road. And the developer at that point, I would think, would need to spend the money to get the roadway.
I think
accepted.
everybody in town, including the highway surveyor, thought it was an accepted road. Because if you called them and asked them, they'd say, yeah, that's a.
Yeah, but it's on the list on Mass Highway.
Yeah.
And,
Is it on the list?
no, yeah,
It
it's on
must
the,
be,
it's on,
because
it's on the
we
list.
spent-
It's on the list as an unaccepted Westport road.
Unaccepted.
So that's all the way from Fisher to
Yep.
the whole, how old is that road?
Well, I think it was paved during Paul Pereira's time.
How
Highway surveyor, when Paul Pereira was here,
Yeah.
so
When was that?
in the 90s.
Well, it runs into Division Road.
Yeah,
And Division Road, I've seen, in the wintertime, I've seen Dartmouth plows going down
On
Division Road. So they, apparently, Dartmouth maintains Division Road. And then if you go straight across the intersection, to the south is Hicksbridge Road, or yeah, which is Westport. To the north is Gidleytown, which is Dartmouth.
Right.
And White Oak continues north, and maybe Westport's
like
been
a-
assuming that that's our part. I don't know.
But
No,
we have also two problems there. We have Stacy Lane, which is coming off of White Oak Run, I
Oh,
think.
that was coming off it too? Oh, so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's another issue.
And so that'll be a problem.
They just put houses on White Oak Run too.
Yeah.
so is White
So, I
Oak
mean-
like Division, is it the boundary of the town?
Somewhere.
Yeah.
But it meanders off into Dartmouth.
Yeah.
But the problem is they're not supposed to bring mail down there, school buses aren't supposed, if it's not accepted, now we're servicing residents and we gotta get it accepted
So.
somehow.
Then I would entertain a motion to suggest that we could approve Rita Lane if White Oak Run is approved in the same meeting.
Yeah.
So moved.
I second that.
And Nadine says we've got, money still, set for White Oak.
No, Rita Lane extension.
Rita Lane
Yeah,
extension.
Rita
Oh,
Lane's
that's for
extension
Rita
still has
Lane.
surety.
Yeah, we have no money on White Oak because it was always, it was a road used by everybody. I don't think it was owned by anybody in particular.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
Stacy Lane's gonna be moving forward for
Right.
acceptance too, so, and they just put houses on that road, so we gotta,
I called today to see if they were on for tonight for releasing of lot 10.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next up is the 6:15 public hearing for Plat 21, Lot 8A, Mellows Way, file number 23-028 SPA-LID minor, continued from October 3rd and November 14th of 2023. Applicant is requesting a continuance on this matter until April 23rd.
The continuance has been requested because SW Cole has not had the opportunity to review the applicant's plans. SW Cole is the consultant on this project. So therefore, we've asked the applicant for a continuance and they agreed to that.
Okay, to when?
When's our next available?
We have it for April 23rd at 6:30.
You want a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I move to continue the public hearing for Plat 21, Lot 8A, Mellows Way, to April 23rd at 6:30 PM. Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is the public hearing for Rosewood Lane, and we're too early, so we'll come back to it. Planners report.
Yeah, one item on here. So for our community compact cabinet information technology grant, we decided that that needed to be posted for an RFP. That RFP was posted about a week ago, and that will remain up until about mid-March, at which point we review all the applications that we receive and make a decision on who we would like to contract with at that time. Again, this is to provide online permitting services across various town departments.
Okay, so when again do we expect responses to our RFP?
Mid-March, and get you a specific date, pull up, if I pull up the RFP. March 15th is the due date at 12
Okay.
p.m.
Okay. That's it?
That's it, just a quick update. I've been busy
You're
with a
supposed to
lot
fill
of
in
other...
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, minutes from February 6th.
So I see one, maybe it's a typo, under the, February 6th. Under Sewell's Way, the motion, which was to extend for 12 months, it reads from March 4th to, March 4th, 2023 to March 4th, 2025. That should be 2024, right?
No, it should be,
Or not?
It-
12-month extension?
24 to 25.
well, I think, at least on my sheet, it says it correctly.
Yeah.
Or is it 25, I'm sorry, maybe I meant to 2024, well, no, wait a minute. We're in 24, right?
Right.
So from now till 25.
Right.
But this says 23.
Mine says, well, not on the paper, but in your
Mark,
iPad.
I sent you an updated revised minutes.
Yeah, I printed those.
Does that?
Yep. Okay, so if it's
Anyway,
correct
on
on
my
your
iPad,
version.
it's correct. It says to March 4th, 2025.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any comments? Is there a motion?
I move that we adopt the minutes of the meeting as published. The minutes of the meeting for February 6th is published.
I was going to talk more about the minutes because we're not at 6:30 yet, but I second the motion.
Okay, now we have a motion and a second now.
No, that's all right. I
Okay.
think the minutes are
All
good.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, we're running out of things to talk about. Invoices.
Don't believe we have any invoices.
Uh-oh, okay. Topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours before the meeting.
I have one item for that. I received an email from a resident at East Beach. I don't think, want to open up the floor to conversation, more general conversation about East Beach in all fairness to the different parties, but they asked that I read this into the record at this planning board meeting, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Our family has owned property on both sides of East Beach Road since the 1940s. Generations of our family have spent summers along this beach. Over the years, the family has grown, and even though the cottage my grandfather built was lost in a storm, we still come to East Beach together every summer. It is a place that unites our extensive family through shared appreciation of its natural beauty and through the memories that are our shared family history. This is not something the town could ever put a price tag on. I do not support a managed retreat from this area. I am in support of proactive options that include beach nourishment and protection that will help to make this coastal area more resilient for years to come. And this is from Kathleen O'Keefe at 81 Silver Lake Drive, Agawam, Mass.
Okay. I'm sure that is a opinion from a lot of people. I don't blame them. So, we've got 5 minutes to kill. So, short and long-term planning discussions?
I would say that the Climate Resilience Committee had a great meeting on February 15th, and we are subcommittee of this committee, so I think that comes under this with really robust attendance, I think in excess of 20 people. And we got 2 items, 2 main items on the agenda were discussed. It does look like we're eventually going to come up with a report. I don't know how many years we've been at this, 3 years or so. And there are 6 kind of chapter headings or components, and we heard from the Water Subcommittee, Mike Sullivan, who gave us a draft of that subcommittee's report. This was the first one out of the box. So it was inspiration perhaps for the others on, what a chapter might look like. And our next meeting, the Health Subcommittee, Phil Weinberg, chair of that, is going to do what that chapter might look like. So, as I said, the most terrifying thing to react to is a blank piece of paper, because you don't know where to begin. But if you see words on a piece of paper, then you can read it and you can react to it. And so now we've got words on a piece of paper, and it's easier for citizens to look at that and say, I like this, or I don't like it, or you left something out, but there's something there to react to. So that was really encouraging. And then the second half was a really good discussion about East Beach and the implications of the 4 storms so far this winter, as that letter attested to, and we pointed out that this was the first of 2 meetings to discuss that. So we got some suggestions, and we put those into some categories, and we expect at the next meeting, which is March something or other, we will continue that discussion.
Thank you, John. The other thing that's happened in terms of long-term planning is we heard from Sean Leach, I think during that meeting, that the Army Corps of Engineers has posted the dredging of the Westport Harbor area and to open up the channels, and it tells how much, how many acres they're going to clear and to what depth. And they're going to take the dredge material out into the ocean and dump it sort of off of the crook between West Beach and Gooseberry along the parallel to the beach but way in the water. I think that that's a terrible waste of the dredge material. It could be used for beach nourishment along Horseneck, West Beach, Horseneck, Bakers, Cherry and Webb. It could also be used for thin layer deposition on the marshes in the West Branch that are disappearing quickly. And we only have, I think, until the end of March, or maybe
March 15th, right?
March 15th?
Yeah.
For the next CRC meeting?
No.
No, for the
Comment period.
comments on the dredge.
Oh,
Public
right,
comments
yeah.
on this draft. And also DEP is also filed.
Yeah, there are two different dates. I can look that up really quick for you, because there's one, like you said, through DEP, and then one through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
And I would think that, I don't know who's the proper one to respond from Westport, but I'd be happy to sign something from the planning board if it's thought that would be the appropriate body to speak. The problem is time is running out. There's not much time to do this.
March 1st is the DEP noticed due date for comment, and the Army Corps' comment period closes on March 15th.
So DEP is the end of next week.
You need a motion for that?
Yeah, well, I'd like some discussion of what we should tell them, I think, or just what I said, that, you know, we have dire need for beach nourishment all over, all our beaches.
I think that I would say that the letter should be worked out between you and the planner, but I think that a lot of that sand came from erosion from the dunes. And it started on land and ended up in the channel. And while it might be easy for the Army Corps to just put it back in the water, easy isn't necessarily the overriding criteria. And I think that it would be best for us to suggest it would do more good for the environment for the town of Westport if it ended up on land, nourishing the dunes and nourishing the beaches, and with the details to be worked out later, but it would be better on land and not in the water. There was I saw a quick correspondence later this afternoon. As you know, the Buzzards Bay Coalition is 2 years into a study with some modeling of sand transport. And Rachel Jacuba, the scientist for the coalition, asked the modelers, if you put it where the projected place is, it is going to eventually find itself, back in the channel. the closer you get to Gooseberry, the longer it's going to take to get back in the channel, but it is going to migrate there. There is a gyre between Gooseberry and the entrance to the harbor. So it moves in a westerly direction along that shore. And so you dump the sand off of Horse Neck next to Gooseberry, and it will move in a westerly direction till it goes back into the channel. So I would move, given all that the chairman be authorized to write a letter to the Army Corps and to DEP saying that it is the recommendation of the planning board that dredge spoils be used on land to help rebuild dunes and beaches that were harmed by recent storms.
Okay. And I'd like also to put in there a plug for thin layer deposition on the
All right.
marshes. Because, or to
For
at least-
consideration
at least
of-
stockpile some of it
Yeah.
somewhere so that we can.
For thin
Have
layer
some-
deposition if it becomes legal to do so in
Correct.
Massachusetts.
Right. Okay.
Fails for lack of a second.
Second.
Oh, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I didn't realize there was a motion. I was carried away by the
It was a
conversation.
long-winded one.
So that was Bullard and Taylor?
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to mention before we pick up the 6:30 public hearing is the short-term strategy for promoting sewer and water vote at the annual election, which is April. It's not
Yes.
long
April
in the
4th.
future, so in my ramblings through my neighborhood, they've heard that there's a proposal for a $31 million not override, but
Appropriation.
appropriation.
Debt
for-
exclusion.
Debt exclusion. And they're like, eyes bug out and, you know, what is going on? And for people who haven't been following the problem with the river and with economic development on Route 6, all of a sudden to hear about this is, they thought the town was broke. Why are they gonna do this? So I think it's gonna behoove all of us who are familiar with this to try to explain to everybody you run into that this is really important for the town, for the long-term viability of our economy, for the viability of our natural resource, the Westport River watershed, and for the health and safety of all the people that this would serve. We have so many people up in the north part of Westport that have contaminated wells, either with PFAS or bacteria or nitrogen. It is something that we really need to do, and we all need to share in the burden of it. So, anyway.
So that's an advertisement for tomorrow's infrastructure meeting, 6 o'clock, and the select board.
6:30.
6:30?
6:30, and also the board will take up, the infrastructure oversight committee will take up betterment assessments to establish a betterment policy. And there is active work with the Watershed Alliance and the Buzzards Bay Coalition to try to put together an outreach program between now in the two votes, both the debt exclusion vote, which the voters have to vote on, and then the town meeting vote to appropriate this money. And all of that came from, we had been working for several years to do a connection to the Fall River system, and to do a relatively modest project of $8 or $9 million, and the overwhelming sentiment that the oversight committee got at a public hearing at the high school was that we're thinking too small and that we ought to do the entire trunk sewer in Route 6. And that's what we decided to do. So we have a lot of work and we need a lot of support to do that.
Good. Okay, so we are now ready for the 6:30 public hearing. So is Rosewood Lane definitive subdivision, file number 23-039C.
Good evening, board members. My name is Emmanuel Pacheco Jr. I'm here tonight representing Emmanuel Pacheco Sr. on behalf of this project at Assessor's Plat 29, Lot 22C. We're here tonight to continue our January 9th meeting for definitive subdivision using the McGraw roadside. Since our last meeting, we've reviewed and addressed the consulting engineer's comments, in which the consultant has since responded with no further issues to the changes made to the subdivision plan. This would also include the widening of the top of the berm, as previously discussed, from 2 feet to 4 feet. In addition, I touched base with the assistant town planner and was updated that all changes made appear to be acceptable as well. As part of those changes, we've revised language on some of the previously submitted waivers at the request of comments received and have included waivers as needed. One waiver previously not discussed was the waiver to relocate underground utilities to the south side of the road. It seemed impractical to have the electrical utilities cross the roadway at 2 different locations, as the existing utility pole is located on the south side of the roadway. Therefore, we moved all underground utilities to the south side of the road, as they will now be more centrally located between both blocks. If there are any questions regarding design, you can go over them now. Thank you.
So, Michael, could you guide us through this, where we were,
Yeah,
how we got where we are, and
Emmanuel had stated that they had addressed some of the drainage concerns that were expressed by field engineering in the last meeting, and they've addressed some of the more, fine details of representing things on the plan that were identified by the assistant planner. So the items that are really outstanding right now are the requested waivers. And so the requested waivers here are: 1, waiver to allow the reduction of roadway radius from 25 feet to 6 feet. 2, waiver to allow a cross slope without a crown for the proposed street and shoulders for portions of the right of way. 3, waiver to allow a shoulder reduction of 10 feet to 7 feet for a portion of the northerly street along parcel 2. 4, waiver to allow all underground utilities, as was just mentioned. And 5, waiver to allow infiltration basins and sedimentation basins to be closer than 50 feet. To allow swales and channels closer than 10 feet to the abutting property lines. Reviewing the application, I think there are a couple of waivers here that might not actually be necessary. So waiver number 4, the subdivision regs don't specify a location for those for the underground utilities. It only specifies a location for gas. So I think number 4 is not a required waiver. I also think that the waiver to allow the reduction of the roadway radius can be eliminated from the plan. And the reasoning behind this is that where the subdivision regulation requires turnarounds is at 150 feet. that's where it kicks in, is at 150 feet where you have to accommodate a turnaround. If you're less than 150 feet, there's not necessarily a turnaround that's required to be accommodated in the subdivision plan. And so if you eliminate the road stub, and this is the road stub here that I'm referring to, you can, you eliminate the need for that waiver for the reduction of the roadway radius from 25 feet to 6 feet, because it's this location right here. This is the radius that they're requesting the waiver. If you eliminate this stub, you can accommodate a driveway to provide access to lot 1. You can provide access off of rural residential lanes to up to, I think it's six lots, and provide frontage for up to 4. So even by eliminating that stub, you're still going to provide adequate road frontage on lots 1 and 2. You're also reducing overall the amount of impervious surfacing on the site. It's a more of a low impact approach. So, you know, I think that's something that could be amended in this plan, and it would eliminate the need for that waiver. The second waiver regarding allowing the cross slope to not have a crown. So typically, you know, you're going to have a peak in the center of the road, and the cross section is all flowing in this direction towards that road stub that I was just referring to direct the drainage into the rear end of the site. Part of the reason why this is proposed the way it is it just follows the natural grade of the property. And so again, instead of having the site substantially regraded just to have a strict conformity to the subdivision regulations, this is going to be less of it's going to be more of a low impact approach on the natural topography. Then regarding the shoulder reduction, the waiver is requested for this area right here, off to the side of the rural road. When I measure this, I'm seeing it as a 10-foot shoulder.
It is a 10-foot shoulder, yeah.
So the
It's
waiver
just
is for the slope.
It's basically slope intersection.
So it's the waiver for the slope of the shoulder. And I think that this waiver, as was described in the applicant's narrative, you can see at the end of the assistant planner's report on item number 3, that this slope, the reason they're requesting this waiver is it's going to create a more natural look when it's actually installed. So if they were to have the slope down from the side of the road, you'd be creating kind of a divot in between where the rural residential lane would be and the septic system, which they stated was going to be a mounted system. And so if you're not having that slope, you can kind of have a more natural looking grade from the rural residential lane and to that to the mounted system. And so I think this creates, even though it's not necessarily a strict conformity to the subdivision regulations, it's creating less of a visual impact on the surrounding area. And lastly, the drainage basin. So the rear lot area, these lots are pretty narrow at the rear of the site. You can see even before subdivision, it's pretty narrow back here. It's going to, and you would have to cross wetlands, and we obviously don't want to disturb any of the wetlands on the site. And so I think this is the drainage basin back here. See where the cursor is. It's probably the best solution given the existing conditions. So, you know, I've noted a couple waivers that I think could possibly be removed. Be interested to hear what the applicant thinks about, you know, reformatting that the format of the rural residential lane. I'd be interested in hearing what the board has to say about that as well. But the remaining 2 waivers, I would be supportive of those because they are creating more of a low impact development approach than a strict compliance to the regs.
So, Michael, if you could explain, you're suggesting that he doesn't have to make the left-hand stub at all?
I don't.
How do you turn around?
Well, they can have a driveway, and the subdivision regulations don't require a turnaround for a road that dead ends. So you have to have a turnaround if the road dead ends over 150 feet. That's where that standard kicks in. Their proposed road is dead ends at 96 feet. And so there's really no standard in the subdivision regulations for roads less than 150 feet. So they can therefore accommodate this with just a rural residential lane that just runs straight back, and they have a driveway off of that lane.
Are they gonna pave this or not?
Gonna be gravel road.
Okay. So, yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this plan has been worked over many times, and the waivers the remaining waivers that would apply all fit naturally on the site. And the idea that there's a drainage easement not more than 10 feet from the property line, this drainage easement, these are related family properties. The drainage easement runs down the property line, so all of that makes good sense. And the long tails on these properties really are just going to continue to be pieces of open space in the community. I don't have any difficulty with the waivers, the few waivers that are remaining, and they're all directly applicable to the site.
So, if we get rid of the left-hand stub, is that where the driveway is going to go anyway?
Yes.
For the left-hand house?
Yes, if you want to show the next sheet on the plan set.
It's really part of the driveway.
Right, it would be a driveway.
Yeah, so
anyway.
the extension.
So you're probably going to do it anyway, you just don't have to comply with the rules.
Yeah, I mean, fine as is, seems reasonable enough. Yeah, that'd be, we have the steps there, and then the driveway will continue around the septic system towards the house. I mean, alternatively, we could also put a driveway here in the future, but I think it makes most sense to just wrap around that farm.
Okay, so Michael, you want to guide us unless anybody has any other questions?
Yeah, I think that's, I would agree with my colleague. It's been a long road on this one. And, I would say to leave the layout the way it is and put your driveway in the best way it fits on the lot with the
Right.
house. And I mean, I would think I'd be willing to approve the plan as he agreed to make the changes that the planner recommended.
I would agree. So, can we approve it without seeing that?
I think it can be a condition that they have to
Submit it to you.
revised plans. Yeah.
Okay. And so, which waivers are we going to keep?
You can, so it depends on how you want to approach this. If you want to eliminate that stub, then you can remove waiver 1. Is that, it sounds like that's the direction.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so we'll remove waiver 1. Just to confirm, you agree to make that revision to the plan?
Now, when you say remove the stuff, you mean remove this whole section of the right of
No,
way?
no, you can't do that.
I didn't think so, I just want to double check. So just
Pavements.
remove the radiuses here.
Mm-hmm.
And remove this one as well?
Yeah.
I could easily do that, yeah.
So, excuse me for being confused. I thought we were talking about getting rid of the stub. You're saying it doesn't have to comply with
No,
the
that's-
radius of the
I
stub?
Still need it for frontage.
For frontage, they would still.
The layout is a question, and what they put inside the layout is a second question. So the layout as it's drawn absolutely has to stay as it is, or else they don't get 2 lots. They haven't produced frontage for the 2 building lots. Right. But whether or not the little stub gets part of the subdivision road, or we just let it be part of his driveway, it's the same 10-foot piece of gravel construction that's going into his house.
So, but then he doesn't have to comply with the radius
And he
requirements.
doesn't have to comply.
Okay.
To me,
It's a
you know,
definition.
I would grant the waiver if we want to grant, you know, we want to have fewer waivers, we could say that the stub isn't part of the subdivision.
Where's the, can you go to the plan with the septic, shows your septic systems?
It's right.
Keep this, that one.
Okay, so for lot 1, that's the left-hand one, is it?
Correct.
Where, so you've got the septic system over, or underneath this this spur in question, right?
It's right here.
Yeah, there's an
No.
existing system
It's
here
up there.
already.
It's in the front, it's in the front yard.
Right, okay, so what you need you need space for a reserve system.
It
Would
was
that
already-
be underneath the road?
No, they were designed already and installed, everything's already approved for this lot. I believe I showed them. They're in the general area of the septic system.
I think part of this is that all this artifice was wrapped around septic systems that already exist in the ground.
Yeah, I see where the existing septic is, but I'm just asking, if you needed to replace it with a reserve system, where would that go?
I mean, this is a giant system, this is a 6-bedroom system, so this system could actually be reduced in half to accommodate a future dwelling. But they would all have this, it'd be a tight fitment around this area, but they do have a little bit of room to expand and reconfigure that in the future if needed.
Yeah.
But it did have to be created a little bit.
Yeah, well,
So basically, he's got a 6-bedroom system now, and if it fails, he'd be putting a 3-bedroom system in. But,
It'd be
and
on
I
the
mean,
side
most of the
the
repairs on a lot like this anyway, they remove them completely, and,
Yeah.
you know, usually the problem's with sand, so, but it might cause you a problem where you gotta get it done, you know, you gotta pump your tank a couple of times, but I don't see a problem with that. That's a Board of Health anyway, that's not us.
Yeah, but it's not something that,
Okay.
we can look at that stuff, but
Yeah.
we can't base our decision
No.
on it.
And then the wells, I guess, are downhill of the septic, but again, if if the Board of Health is all right with that. It's not ideal, but I'm just observing that, and I mean, the reality is that you've got a lot here with 200 feet of frontage, and you're trying to subdivide it, and to do that, you need 300 feet of frontage, so you've hit, after combing through our zoning bylaws and our subdivision rules and regulations, which you've been doing for months now, and you probably can give a seminar on it, in various iterations that we've been seeing of this, you come up with the rural residential lane, which, I suppose it does meet our bylaw, although, I mean, one could argue that as a lane, I mean, that's hardly a lane, but we don't have anything in our bylaw that says that requires a minimum length for the lane. So for now, I guess that passes as a lane.
Yeah, there's been similar roadways approved such as this.
Say it again?
There's been similar roadways similar to this that have been approved.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a tight fit overall. The houses are going to be close to each other, and how far apart are they going to be?
I
If
think
they
they're about
build to those envelopes?
40 to 50 feet away from each other.
Yeah, so that's a first down and a half 45 feet or so, 15 yards, but anyway,
But it was a duplex lot, too.
yeah, I remember all these
Yeah, it is.
versions here. So, I mean, persistence has paid off, but anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so are we okay with, should we have a finding on the waivers? So what waivers are we?
I would propose to make a, yeah, if we have a finding on waivers and just move to approve the plan with changes.
Right.
And
So waivers 2, 3, and 4?
5.
5. 2, 3, and 5?
2, 3, and 5.
2, 3, and 5. Okay, somebody want to make a motion to
Mr.
accept
Chair,
these
I
waivers?
move that we approve the endorsement of the plan entitled Definitive Subdivision Plan, Rosewood Lane, Westport, Massachusetts, for Emmanuel B. Pacheco, map 29, lot 22C, revised through January 29th, 2024, with waivers 2, 3, and 5, because the plan complies with the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81P.
I will second that, but I would like to comment about that. I think that's the wrong citation. That's the A&R citation. And the motion is, the correction I would offer on my colleague's motion is that it is compliant with the, instead of citing the 81P, I would cite because it complies with the provisions of the planning board's rules and regulations.
That's what I meant to say.
Then I second what he meant to say.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, next is the 6:45 public hearing on our zoning amendments for this coming town meeting. And I'm going to let Michael read through what he wants to read through on short-term rentals.
Sure. Before we jump in, I just want to talk about the hearing format. So I'll start with reviewing each slide with the planning board, and then we'll move to a public comment period. We'll give, it's the planning board's policy to provide 5 minutes for each person. I think we can do that 5 minutes per person per entire bylaw section that we're talking about. And just please state your name and address for the record before commenting. Make sure Nadine gets that down. And if you have repeat comments, we have probably about like 45 slides here tonight. So if you have repeat comments, try to keep it down to a minimum. So here's an overview of what we're going to be covering tonight with this public hearing. There will be a new short-term rental section, modifications to what is proposed to be renamed the Science and Technology Mixed-Use Overlay District. It's going to be proposing a definition for congregate living, rezoning the unrestricted district to residential agricultural, and creating a new business district called the Westport Gateway District, and changing the standards by which the planning board considers lot width. First up, the short-term rental section. I will just read these slides off verbatim, since that's what we've been doing in previous public hearings and work sessions. So the definition for short-term rental is proposed to be a dwelling that is not a hotel, motel, lodging house, or bed and breakfast, where at least one room or unit is rented out through the use of advanced reservations, not to exceed 31 consecutive days. Short-term rental includes an apartment, house, cottage, and condominium. It does not include property that is rented out through tenancies at will or month-to-month leases. It also does not include timeshare property or bed and breakfast, and it refers to the definition of bed and breakfast. Section 5.1, Table of Use Regulations. In order to enable this as a permitted by right use, we're inserting short-term rental in the business commercial section in alphabetical order and allowing these uses by right in the residential, agriculture, business, and unrestricted. Next, we'll be proposing to add a new section 9.10, short-term rental, to read as follows. The purpose section: the short-term rental zoning bylaw provides for administration and enforcement of Westport short-term rentals in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of both the occupants of those rental units and the general public, and to maintain the quality of life in residential neighborhoods. This bylaw provides for the orderly operation of short-term rentals, recognizing their historic role in Westport's economy. Registration: no owner shall operate a short-term rental without first registering annually with the building department. General requirements: a short-term rental is permitted in accordance with Section 5.1 Table of Use Regulations and subject to the following requirements. A, guest rooms must be provided within a legal dwelling unit. B, no tenant or lessee shall let or sublet a short-term rental. C, the owner shall adhere to applicable rules, regulations, and codes of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and Town of Westport. D, contact information for a responsible local entity or individual with authority to act on behalf of the owner must be provided to the building inspector and be kept current at all times. E, dwelling units designated as affordable or otherwise income restricted that are subject to affordability covenants or otherwise subject to housing or rental assistance under local, state, or federal programs or law may not be used as short-term rentals. F, short-term rentals are for residential uses only. Commercial uses, including but not limited to event spaces or beverage promotion, are not permitted. G, short-term rentals shall be for a period of at least 1 week in the residential agriculture district. H, sufficient parking shall be provided on the property or strictly along the property frontage if parking is allowed on the street. I, the zoning board of appeals may waive standards G and H by special permit, provided the applicant demonstrates that the waiver will not create adverse impacts upon the surrounding area. And J, short-term rentals must be registered with the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. I would suggest here that 1 week is modified to specify the number of intended days, to be clear, so 7 days. Violation provisions. Violations of Section 9.10 of this bylaw will be subject to the provisions of MGL Chapter 40, Section 21D, regarding non-criminal disposition as adopted by the Town of Westport. Any owner who fails to comply with the provision of this section shall be subject to the actions identified in Section 2.1 for each offense, where each day of non-compliance is considered a separate offense. B, short-term rentals that are the subject of 3 or more negative findings as issued by the inspector of buildings, of violations of this section within a 6-month period, or 3 or more violations of any municipal ordinance or state law or code relating to zoning requirements, excessive noise, improper disposal of trash, disorderly conduct, or other similar conduct within a 6-month period shall be ineligible for short-term rental use for a 6-month period immediately following the third violation. And then next up, we would have the public comment period, but I'd like to have the board provide any comments, if you have any, or revisions.
I like it. I have,
Mr. Chair, I think we've gotten a lot of comments on this, from trying to figure out what state the owner ought to live in and so on and so forth. And we've gotten a lot of comments from many of the people in the audience. And I think this has really benefited a lot from what we've heard from people. such as language that short-term rentals have been part of the history of Westport for, you know, many, many years and are a very good thing for Westport. That language is in here. So I congratulate you, Michael, for taking all of those comments. I don't have extensive notes, but as you read through this, I saw the benefit of comments we have heard from many people. And this has benefited tremendously from what we've heard, so thank you for getting all of that wisdom. I'm sure it's not all of the wisdom, but thank you for getting so much of that wisdom incorporated in that. It's much better than where we started.
And this whole task that has been set before the planning board was because we had a advisory ruling by the town council that short-term rentals were not an allowed use in the residential district. And having that ruling, we felt obligated to fix that. I think this fixes that in the least painful way that we could. First of all, it becomes an as of right allowed use by adding it in the definitions. If this were adopted, it automatically becomes a use which is allowed. So it's no longer an unallowed use. It's a use allowed by right, and it is not a use which requires a permit. It's a use that only needs to be registered with the building department. The words are a little longer than that, but essentially that's the impact of the bylaw as it's proposed for town meeting.
Yeah, I would say, you know, as one who's been on the subcommittee from the first time, from the beginning, when we started with a much more, a much longer, more comprehensive, let's say, bylaw, but because this is such a delicate issue to deal with, you've got people on with various interests, and it's one of those situations. I don't think you're going to please all the people all the time, but I think this gets us to a point which I hope will be accepted by the town, and see that it provides a solution, perhaps not perfect, but it provides a solution, as many towns are doing now. I hear about this all the time, about towns throughout the state which are either have enacted their own bylaws on short-term rentals or are struggling with them. They've had proposals that have been rejected, etc. So it's not an easy issue, but I think in getting this down to kind of its basic, very basic form, and there may be a few terms or provisions that might still be an issue with some people, I still think as something that could be adopted, hopefully by the town. I think is about as close as we'll get at this point. So, you know, and I agree that Michael, you've done a good job in trying to distill all the comment, take into account all the various comments, and so I'm hopeful that the town will see that, you know, in the spirit of kind of this bipartisanship, as you hear in government, you know, trying to, not everybody gets everything, but if everybody gets something, then hopefully it's acceptable.
I would just like to ask Michael a question. In G, the short-term rentals shall be for a period of at least either 1 week or 7 days in the residential agricultural district. By omission, that means in the business or commercial district, it can be any length.
Yeah, based on our discussion at the last meeting where this was being considered, you know, was considered that that would be an appropriate use in the business district because you could have other things like motels and hotels in that area.
Mr. Chair, can I make one more comment? I think, you know, any time you try and do something for the first time, it's unrealistic to think you're going to get it absolutely right the first time. But it's important to get it in place and then see how it works. And I hope that, and there's no question in my mind that short-term rentals have been a very positive, I mean, this is what we heard the first meeting. Short-term rentals have been a very positive part of Westport, Westport's character, Westport's economy. But we don't want what has happened in the Cape, what has happened in Nantucket, what has happened in some other places, for something to get out of hand and change the character of Westport. And so we want to enact an ordinance to keep what we love about short-term rentals from morphing into something that has occurred in other places. And we're not immune from that. And so I hope that what can happen at town meeting is the planning board with representatives of the industry can say, this is the best we got. We hope it'll get enacted. And then if we find out as it's enacted that there's some parts of this that don't work, then we're gonna, you know, find out what doesn't fit. You know, I've got a jacket and it rubs me here. Well, I'm not just gonna keep a jacket that rubs me here. I'm gonna go to a tailor and have them let it out. You know, if there's a rub, we're gonna find out where it rubs and make changes to it. But you can't predict everything. So we've got to get it in place, see where it works, where it's good, and where it doesn't work, and where it doesn't work, that's where we've got to make changes. But you don't find that out until you test drive it. That's my opinion anyway. But I think that, you know, everyone wants progress, nobody wants change. This ordinance will be changed, and it's always tough to get change through a town meeting. And I think our best shot is if we go there and say, we think this is worth doing, and if there are parts of it that, as we implement it, need to be fixed, we're gonna fix it.
And, Mr. Chair, the short-term rentals for a period of 1 week, I think is responsive to what most people have said. People have family homes, they need to cover their tax costs. They need to, you know, to be able to afford to keep these homes. And so they're renting them for a week or 2 weeks for people's summer vacations. And that's, and you know, I've been such a renter, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And so I think for most people that are looking to make sure that they can still rent properties, this is totally consistent with what people are doing.
Okay, anybody in the audience care to discuss this? Nicole, you had your hand up first.
co-plant owner of Even Keel Realty, 803 Main Road. Thank you again. I know I've been here for all these meetings, all of the above, and I know we've gotten through a lot of stuff. I go back to G. I know a lot of people feel the 1 week is a reasonable thing. We had gone through most of the short-term rental meetings on the committee for a minimum of 2 days, and I think I proposed the 2-day minimum. As the economy changes, as things change, not everyone can afford a full week of $2,000, $3,000 for a week, and they're not on the water. We do not have enough revenue and things in this economy to entertain people in Westport for a full week. The North End does not have enough for people to do for a week. They're going to go to other towns for family, for events. Like when they come into town for a weekend, a funeral, a graduation, a holiday weekend, we don't have enough here for them to stay for a full week. I really think what the board needs to consider, 2 to 3 day minimum maybe, but I don't think we need all of the town to consider a full week. We don't need that. We have people, we have one hotel, we have 2 hotels. We do not have a place for people to stay close to their family in a family crisis. There are people who rent out their homes to keep their homes while they are going through family issues. There is a lot of need for this in the North End. It is not just vacation homes. So I am asking the board to please consider those people, and it's not just the elite, it's also for people who need, when they have a family wedding, they can't afford all of this, but they need 3 or 4 bedrooms, they want to be together, they want to reunite for a family wedding, graduations. It is not just a week on the beach. That is not just the people who are renting out these homes. So I'm asking the board for that. The H, public street, it's a public street. I think H should be removed still. We are talking about parking on a public street. I don't think an attorney will look at that and say, we're talking about parking on a public street. We can't police that. Zoning and I feel like it's, again, we're giving special waivers for certain people, but again, I know that's a special permit. And B, we talked about trash at one point, and again, that was a Board of Health issue. I don't know how B kind of like popped up again, excessive noise, all that. Again, who are we policing and how are we going to do the rules? We had all that in the above, but I think B popped up again later on in this review. I go back to the big thing is, I think if you would like this to pass, you have to consider the North End and the people who do not, they want to be here for funerals, holiday weekends, family reunions, weddings, and graduations. They cannot afford a full week of a rental. So I'd like the board to take that into consideration. Thank you.
So Nicole, can I ask you a question? I don't understand your comment about the last provision, B.
Excessive noise, improper disposal of trash. We had talked about that at the short-term rental meetings, that we weren't going to talk about trash. That was a Board of Health issue. That we talked about, like things like that, we weren't going to police that. We talked about that on the committee. And so that popped back up again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am?
Louise Gerard, Harrison Street.
Could you please come up? And could you state your name again for the microphone?
Louise Gerard, Harrison Street. So this applies to,
I'm sorry, I can't understand your last name and I need your address.
last name is Gerard.
Gerard?
G-E-R-A-R-D. Harrison Street, Harrison, 27, Westport.
Thank you.
So this will apply to the entire town of Westport.
Yes.
It seemed like there was, for the North End, though, there was like a different rules. When you're talking about, like you're talking about reconfiguring the North End of Westport. So that's what I was confused about.
Commercial areas, maybe.
Yes, exactly.
Commercial areas, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yes.
Or were you talking about his recitation of what we're going to be talking about later? So.
Yes.
Well, I think the 7-day period doesn't apply in commercial areas.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's the difference. The 7-day restriction is for residential areas, agricultural areas, but is not applied to commercial areas. So is that what you were asking about?
Yes, yes, I was a little confused on that.
Okay. So if there's a short-term rental in a commercially zoned area, you can rent it out for 1 day, 2 days.
I see, I see. And so, commercially zoned area would be along Route 6?
Along Route 6 and along
77?
177 and along Main Road in
Down
Central
here.
Village.
Oh, okay.
So Central Village from the Village Garage all the way down to Cornell Road.
Oh, okay.
And on 177 from, I think it goes from the Dartmouth line to Sanford Road, or almost to Sanford Road,
Oh,
something like
okay.
that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Steve Kozer, 513 Old County Road. Michael, you and I have had a couple of dialogues via email, and I was wondering if you could just clarify how this regulation applies to bed and breakfast establishments and bed and breakfast homes as defined by the Department of Revenue, and whether those would now be allowed under the zoning guidelines.
This regulation would not apply to bed and breakfast homes or otherwise. It's just purely short-term rentals.
But would they now be allowed in a residential zone?
Short-term rentals?
No, bed and breakfast establishments and homes.
Bed and breakfasts are allowed in rural agricultural areas.
Yes.
And residential.
Yeah, well,
Both.
Or residential agriculture,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I just ask for clarification? Because you only define bed and breakfast homestays, not bed and breakfast establishments in your bylaws, so therefore you're silent on allowing bed and breakfast establishments.
That is
which are
correct.
more than 3 bedrooms.
That's correct.
So, does that mean that's allowed? If it's silent?
The table of uses in our zoning bylaw has the provision, and this is the reason why we're here today, has the provision that if a particular use is not called out in that table of uses, it is therefore disallowed.
So this part of the bylaw amendment that we're talking about doesn't address bread and breakfast.
Right, but
Correct.
it initially did when it was in the subcommittee.
Yep.
And it was decided to keep the scope to purely just short-term rentals and leave bed and breakfast out of it.
Okay. So I think to answer his question, what is the status of bed and breakfast in town of Westport?
I am looking at our use table right now. If you give me just a second, I can answer that question.
Mr. Chair, I didn't understand the distinction that Tanya made about different
Bed and
types.
breakfast.
Establishments and bed and breakfast.
So,
Can I
yeah, I just want to answer the gentleman's question really quick since we're through. So a bed and breakfast would be in the residential agricultural district is allowed by special permit at the Board of Appeals, and in the business district it is allowed by site plan, and in the unrestricted site plan at the planning board, and at the unrestricted district site plan at the planning board.
So they're not allowed without a special permit under this proposal?
It's special permit or site plan. And this proposal is not changing anything in the underlying.
That's the way it is now.
That's correct. That's the current bylaw. This proposal is not changing anything for bed and breakfast.
So why, I mean, the question is, why would you allow short-term rentals which have more people in the residence versus what is defined by the State Department of Revenue as a bed and breakfast home, which is a one-bedroom establishment that serves breakfast, and a bed and breakfast establishment that is more than one bedroom that serves breakfast? why would those now be prohibited versus short-term rentals being accepted?
Well, I don't think they're prohibited, they're allowed by special permit. And I think part of it, not that we had anything to do with making that regulation, but that's what exists by town meeting vote, I don't know when. Probably is because of the serving breakfast is like a restaurant and has to meet certain specifications by the Board of Health, I would think, but I don't know.
Thanks for your consideration.
And to second your question, we couldn't change this without starting all over again to include bed and breakfast. Honey?
Tanya Ryden, 34 Fountain Drive. I'm here as a private citizen. I think that the short-term rental definition, I've talked to Michael about clarifying that. What I would suggest, I do encourage support for the 7-day minimum rental in the residential district. There are short-term rentals available in the commercial district. There's hotels and so on to cover that need. A 1-week rental is more like a vacation rental rather than a transient night-by-night population. And being in like a residential neighborhood myself, where we don't have any short-term rentals currently, you know, if a home's turned over and they converted it to short-term rentals, a 1 week would be more palatable than different people every night. So I certainly support the 1 week in the residential district. The other thing I would ask the planning board to consider is that under Mass General Law, Chapter 64G, Section 14, which specifies the ways that towns can regulate short-term rentals, gives them a lot of options, including ones you've decided not to pursue, like requiring health and safety inspections or regulating the class of operators or number of local licenses permitted. There are other options that you could pursue. But for registering annually with the building department, I would recommend that you require, as permitted under this statute, that operators demonstrate that any properties or premises controlled, occupied, operated, managed, or used as accommodation subject to the excise under this chapter, which is the room occupancy tax, are not subject to any outstanding building, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, fire, health, housing, or zoning code enforcement, including any notices of violations, notice to cure, orders of abatement, cease and desist orders of correction notices. In other words, just require that as part of the registration, the owner of the property certifies compliance. Not that you inspect or do anything further, but that you have at least that certification that they are in compliance with those specific provisions that are allowed under Mass General Law, Chapter 64G, Section 14. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes. Geraldine Mullen, 168 Cherry Lane. Thank you for your considerations that you've done already. I have a couple of questions. One, I thought I heard someone say that you have eliminated the fees in the inspections. Tonight, I think I heard that. Is it true?
That is correct. It isn't in this version.
I'm sorry?
That's true.
Yes.
Okay, thank you
Just
for
a
that.
correction to that. The fee schedule would be set after, a fee schedule would be set after town meeting.
That's my next question. having read this, so that, how, I see you people or somebody in town, maybe not you, maybe it's the other board, that once the town meeting passes this, that they can do what they want for fees or registry inspections and all of the above. And that makes me nervous from the point of view, the guy that lives next door isn't subject to this. And it's discrimination? No. So that's a concern of mine, that where does the control go? You said about the sleeve being uncomfortable, and I understand
Now,
that.
can I just ask a clarifying question? By the guy next door, do you mean the guy next door who is running a short-term rental?
No, just a home in Westwood,
Okay.
that he doesn't, or she doesn't have to abide by the same rules.
But they're not running a short-term rental, getting income.
True, but, well, let me not rethink it, but let me say, if they were to have a party, a wedding, or any of the things we've talked about, is there any way of controlling that? Other than what I would do right now, and could have done before all of this, is call the police department and say it's after 10 o'clock. And there's noise, can you do something about it? Or there's trash in the yard. I called the town hall about that years ago because of the town beach. Wasn't cared for, it is now. And I think what my concern is, you guys have worked hard, and I agree, it's gonna need tweaking, but who's got control over that tweaking? It's important, because God only knows what they'll decide they wanna do, and do it under this, says it's okay, somebody's gonna make a change, and they're going to do it, you know that.
So, I'd just like to reply to a couple of your points.
Sure.
The fee schedule will be set by probably the select board after this goes to, if it becomes law.
Okay.
The fee would be just like the beach fee or the dump fee or whatever.
We don't want those either.
Well, but anyway, it's something that we live with, and they come up with a fee schedule every year. There is no inspection involved with this that I could,
But can they change it to put that inspection?
not unless they go to town meeting.
Okay.
So, I mean, this will be the law if it gets passed. And if we don't change it from the information we get from you folks, and we're not in charge of it, town meeting is in charge of the final wording.
Does this go back, any changes you people may make tonight, go back to the select board before it goes to town meeting?
Yes.
It does have to be.
It goes to the select board, but they take it and put it into the warrant.
They will be the ones that do
Right.
that.
But they physically put it in the warrant.
Yes.
We send them the text of what we think,
Okay.
based on the public
Yeah.
hearing, it should read.
Would any of you happen to know, because I don't, and I was gonna try to look it up and I haven't had time. Cherry Web Lane, what's that zone as?
Residential agricultural.
Even though it's got businesses at both ends?
Yep. They've been there forever, before zoning.
Exactly, so how
Before
does that
zoning.
exclude it being a business? And how about Walter Quinn's old house? There were the big docks.
Mean with the huge stocks?
Yeah.
The new ones?
Yeah,
What about it? I've seen the big docks.
they got something going on tonight. It looked like it was maybe more interesting than this meeting here, as I went by it.
We didn't get the invitation, so.
No, I know it, but I figured we could knock on the door and say we were interested. And I have
Mrs.
this.
Mullen, let me respond to a question. You're my neighbor, and he's my neighbor, the guy with the docks. How do we tweak? First of all, isn't this fun? We're getting to know all of you. This is how we tweak, right? The same way we're doing this. Who's in control is town meeting, ultimately, right? But it starts here in meetings like this, right? So if it isn't working, you're gonna let us know. And we're gonna do just what we're doing tonight, which is we're gonna talk about what isn't working. And it's gonna happen right here in this room to figure out what isn't working. And then we're gonna draft, I'll just call it an amendment. And then, just as is happening now, it's gonna go to the select board and ultimately to town meeting. That's the way it works in Westport. So that's how it will work, the same way it's working now. We're all gonna get to be even friendlier than we are tonight.
Trying to figure it out.
Trying to figure it out, exactly. Trying to figure it out.
Well, one of the things, and I'm sure you are all aware of this, that was somewhere I read in the last, say, month. And they listed this bigger list of taxes. Not necessarily Westport, but it could have been. That were not here 60 years ago, any of them. And that scares the heck out of me, because I've been here that long. And I think, it can't keep going. We don't have any money in Westport, and yet we keep spending it. So, that is an issue that the whole town needs to address. And one last question. This contact person for a rental, it doesn't make sense because they can't be available at all times unless they sit with their cell phone. They may have a doctor's appointment. They may be in the ocean swimming. They may be have an unfortunate episode, be in the hospital. How are you going to?
Well, if it was you, because you live there, right, you're the contact person. But some of these houses are owned by people in New York. And so, right, so you can't contact them. So we need a local person. And yeah, people go to sleep and everything else. You still need someone.
But that's,
if people are raising a ruckus, that you can get in touch with. And so a lot of people are local, and that's easy. It's the people or a trust, that owns a property. You need a person, a real live person who's local. Yeah, I need someone that I can call.
well, I find it, I could be on my phone and they can't call me.
Well, yeah, but you're still here, we know who you are. And they'll call me and say, will you go down the street, John, and get Mrs. Mullen?
Yeah, where do you live?
She's on her phone, knock on the door.
Right. I don't get far. But anyway, I thank you for your time. And those were my concerns tonight.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Cindy Scheller, 4 Beach Road, Westport.
I just have a question that came up with the discussion of the fee schedule. There's no mention of fees in this bylaw at all. It's just a registration process. So where does the fee schedule get inserted? I mean, is it understood that everything has a fee?
No, I think it should be written into that section.
It's
I have
not
the same
understood by
question.
me. I don't see any
I thought it was great.
authority in here
Registration,
to-
that's fine.
There's no authority in this to assess fees.
Right.
Right, exactly, which I like, because there's no, if you can put a fee and then there's no control over how high that fee is going to be, and that, I think, is a concern of everybody who is involved in this process. But I was wondering about that.
Well, let's ask the question. What does everybody think? Should there be a registration fee?
No,
They're already paying tax.
Okay.
They're paying a mouse tax and they're already getting taxed as without on the income. So it's already being taxed.
Okay, so anybody else for this one? Okay, let's move on.
Okay, this next series of slides it's going to have some text amendments. So you'll notice that things that'll be removed in them are in strike through. If there's a whole section that's being inserted, that'll be displayed in italics. And if it's just a small, brief text amendment, I call it out in bold italics, so it's a little bit more noticeable on the slide. And these ones, instead of reading the slide word for word, like I said, we have a lot more content to get through. We have 25 more slides to get through, so I'll just be providing a summary of each one. So next we're going to review some amendments that are proposed to the area that is now is proposed to be renamed the Science and Technology Mixed Use Overlay District. So in the purpose section of the renamed district, Science and Technology Mixed Use Overlay, it is proposed to include that residential uses will be integrated with the surrounding area, promoting a live-work mixed-use environment that offers employment and housing opportunities, promote the creation of housing in proximity to services and employment opportunities. And then the purpose section will then also be amended to reflect that screening is necessary more generally, not just exclusively between commercial and residential uses. So there's really just one thing called out here in this text amendment, and that is to note that the planning board shall coordinate reviews in accordance with the application requirements which are stated in the zoning bylaws. Regarding the land uses allowed in this district, additional flexibility will be added to include professional services more generally, multi-unit and inclusionary housing, data centers, warehousing, and mixed uses. The last section on here is added, section O, and what it essentially, kind of long, but what it's essentially saying is that similar to other types of allowed uses are also permitted if the planning board determines that that is a like use. And then lastly, we clean up the language in items E, F, and H. There are definitions in section 3 of the bylaw for these land uses, and so we don't need to use the phrase to state as defined here under.
Michael, what's the shorthand for STME? STMOD? Have you come up with something yet?
I mean, we could also rename it the Mixed Use Science and Technology Overlay District, or just come up with a name that is not a mouthful.
Come up with something that we can
Um,
say.
yeah, that's a challenging one.
Do we have to change the name of it?
We can tonight, yeah.
I mean, no, I mean, do we have to change it from the start?
You don't
Even though
have
we're
to.
allowing all those other things.
You don't have to.
Star's a lot easier to say than
Yeah.
anything else.
No, that would be fine.
If we called it the Mixed-Use Science and Technology Overlay District, it would be Mustard.
Yeah.
I like that. Mustard. Mustard.
We can settle on something a little bit later.
Mustard is good. I like that on my hot dog. Mustard. Okay.
So there are a couple of uses that are deleted from the Science and Technology Mixed Use Overlay District. And these are deleted because they fall under use categories that are already listed in the bylaw. And so these are software and communication service uses, telemarketing and telephone-based services, light manufacturing, and advanced materials operations. These can all fall under broader categories of data facilities, light industry, and research and development. So just kind of summing up this section a little bit for brevity. It's a pretty long section. So. Next, we have some amendments to the lot requirements in this district, and there's 8 of them. Number 1, the minimum lot size is proposed to be reduced from 10 to 5 acres, and subsequently you see that section is crossed out. We're just going to simplify that language and require that there's 50% upland. 2, the minimum lot frontage is increased to 100 feet from 50 feet. 3, a maximum residential density is set at 15 dwelling units per acre. 4, the minimum side setback is set from 50 feet to 25 feet. Now that is unless the development is abutting a district that is not in this district or the Westport Gateway District, which we'll talk about later. It'll be an enhanced business district. So essentially right now, if it's abutting a residential agriculture district, that setback would be increased to 100 feet. 5, similar sort of story, the minimum rear setback is decreased from 50 feet to 30 feet, again, unless it's abutting a district that is not in this district or the Westport Gateway District, and then it would increase to 100 feet.
What are you trying to do with increasing lot coverage? With the reduction of setbacks?
Oh, okay, because I was going to say we're not quite at lot coverage yet, but the point of, so reducing the setbacks, well, okay, so there's the provision to increase the setback when you're adjacent to a very, a more low-intensive use. When you're reducing the side yard setbacks, it allows you to get an increased lot coverage on that development, and you get sort of the development patterns that have been visioned out in previous planning studies for this area, which is buildings a little bit closer together, closer to the street, that sort of thing.
Okay, so we're trying to get denser, more urban kind of feel in this area.
In some cases, it would, so I think a good example of what it could resemble more is more the area right east of Route 88, where all those businesses and some of the homes are very quite close together.
Okay.
And so more in that vein than you know, the large scale development that you might see in other places, which in Westport is extremely difficult to do just because there's so much wetlands up there.
Yeah.
You can't really have those large expanses of development.
Yeah, okay, cool.
6, the lot coverage is proposed to be increased from 50% to a maximum of 65%. Number 7, there was a typo here, and so that's corrected. It previously said that you would need an additional 200 feet of setback for every additional story or 15 feet. And so that was supposed to be 20 feet, 200 feet is very excessive. And so that's now 20 feet. And 8, the upland standard clarifies that 50% of the lot area must be upland.
So you're saying that the Stod's right the write-up for the Stod as it exists today is incorrect with that 200 feet setback for every
For every additional
story?
story, yeah.
That was true, not.
That was true?
That was true. That was intentional back in the day.
The implication of that is that it substantially limits any sort of
Well, we were
second
talking about
story.
10-acre lots.
Right.
And now you're talking about 5-acre lots.
Right.
So
We
that
have
really,
smaller lots too.
it really cuts back on
Mhm.
the thing. But, so it wasn't a mistake. We can change it, but it's not,
Okay.
it wasn't a mistake.
I stand corrected. Next, in the performance standards section, the stormwater infrastructure section B is, we just kind of summarize this, with the text that was struck from here to just state that the applicant must follow the Mass DEP stormwater standards. For the exterior lighting section, we're proposing to require that lighting is installed with dark sky standards, so it's making sure that the lighting is shielded and not causing an excessive amount of light trespass. Basically, a lot more, light shining into adjacent properties, and making sure that the lighting is not as tall, so with a maximum height of 20 feet instead of 30 feet. And then lastly, it's added that the planning board can waive a landscaped buffer area, provided that doing so is not detrimental to abutters. And this is a map showing where, so the last change to the overlay district is that it is proposed to pick up a couple of parcels on Route 6. They're added westward from Sanford Road in the red circle on the map up here. And that is to encourage additional development opportunities in the corridor, especially right there. That's a pretty critical segment. It's a gateway into Westport. So it's to encourage additional development in that location. And that is it for the Science and Technology Mixed Use Overlay District, or whatever. Settled on.
So I'm serious that I think the acronym has to be something we can say, and I'm good with MUSTOD, but I do think because people are going to refer to it by its acronym, and STOD worked, but now we've got mixed use in it to do it. And so if you can come up with something better than MUSTOD, fine, but I think people are just going to call it by those initials, so we got to order those initials in a way that you can say it.
MUSTOD works for me.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I had a comment. These uses, I'm very pleased that we've expanded the uses that are in here. We've increased the density. The reason we're looking at all this area is if we make the public investment of sewer, and there's already water available on Route 6, but if we make the public investment of sewer through this section, even if we did the first section, it would cover this area. And we essentially want to encourage real estate development where we make a public investment in water and sewer, so that essentially we harvest net positive tax revenues to the town. This would be new growth. New growth is outside the about 2.5 cap, so it brings in, it can bring in needed revenue. And we can see that while we've added a few things and everything, but this bylaw, the existing overlay bylaw has stayed in place since for
11, 12 years.
Yeah, 11 or 12 years, and no one has
Meatworks.
Meatworks is built in this area. And so, I'd like the board to consider whether or not we make these uses as of right, subject to a site plan review and LID, as opposed to a special permit.
Oh, I agree.
If we do that, now we still have all the review controls, but they are not subject to the special permit, and particularly the special permit appeal. It is, if we make them as of right, subject to site plan review, now we've done whatever we can legally to encourage development and still have controls. So I would, as we get to deal with each of the rezonings, that would be a recommendation I would make to my colleagues.
Yeah.
I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So with the architectural talk in there, is that, so how do we approve that if it's not a special permit, just as a question?
We do it as, it's listed, since it is listed, we cover that in our site plan review.
Okay. Any other comments from the audience? Nicole first.
Nicole Plain, Green Care Realty, 803 Main Road. There is one owner that is fairly high in this concentration of the scientific overlay. I have a question to the board. Why was this why is this going to town meeting? Why was this brought up now to have this? This has been on the meeting for a long time. This has been sitting for a long time. Why is this going to town meeting now?
Because we're putting water and sewer in that area, and we also need more development, and nothing was happening up there. So why not?
It's very wet where the water and sewer is going on this property. Just
It's not going on this property.
near on Route 6 where this
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
the
I know.
property is very wet. So the scientific overlay, I'm just asking why it's going to town meeting for multiple reasons. I agree that it needed to be changed. One of the questions I had is for the intent to include residential use. Was it stated before that it couldn't be for residential
The
use
underlying
before?
district was still residential.
Okay, that's what
So
I
it
wanted to
could
make
have
sure
been.
because
It is.
that was always the
It
intent
still
from
is.
what it still is.
Yeah.
But it's the way it's written here, I just didn't understand the way it says for intent purposes.
It's the
Multifamily.
uses that are not residential agriculture
Right.
can be allowed with the overlay district. But the underlying district stays the same under this bylaw.
Okay. My other question is, for 40Bs, is that a special permit for this?
That's a state requirement, it goes to the zoning board, doesn't come here.
It would not come to, so it doesn't be under this overlay. That was my question of how this would sit.
You can't,
Because the dwelling
you can't block 40Bs.
You can't mark 40Bs, but I didn't know what the zonings and all of this. So I just saw this before I came in because I looked up the short-term rental, and I saw this before I came into the meeting tonight. I said, oh, I guess I'm staying late.
So we would hope that people would use the bylaw to do the development instead of a 40B, because they would have less of a requirement to provide affordable housing, so it should be less expensive for them. So we would hope that they could find a way to use our inclusionary bylaw
Okay.
and do it that way instead of a 40B. So
Okay. I didn't know if that was the intent. I didn't know, I wasn't, because I know the multifamily dwellings and all of that was included in this, and in more than one family, so I didn't understand how that was written, and how that was intended. That's the intent
It's
of the.
intended for multifamily housing if that's what they want to build.
And we allow the density at 15, units an acre, which is the MBTA requirement when
That's what I thought,
when Fall River Station finally opens, Westport will be a rural adjacent community to the MBTA. So now, when this passes at town meeting, we've now got a more than 50 acres of land in the town zoned for the density that the MBTA requires. And being a compliant community, it doesn't cut us off from state aid for our schools and all that, which is the threat that the state has.
So all you have to do is designate 50 acres, is that what you just have to designate 50 acres? That,
We just have to say somewhere, we just have to show that somewhere in the town there is 50 acres zoned.
that could be
at this.
developed.
Doesn't have to be developed, it has to be zoned.
Yeah.
Zoned, that's it.
Has to be zoned, well, really, you have to wait until the state requires us to do it, because you have to go through the whole process of working with DHCD and
Yep.
everything before, and they want you to do it before you go to town meeting, so that you go to the town meeting with appropriate zoning and approved by them.
Right, 'cause we've all talked about this,
This
yeah,
is
before.
not doing that, but
Okay.
it's a step in that direction. So it's allowing multifamily housing. I don't think it says
It doesn't say
50.
apartment buildings,
It does.
we talked, I know on some people on this board, we've talked about apartment buildings, we've talked about different things for this zoning area, we've talked about, and again, I know we've talked about multiple things for this property, and again, with the things that have come to me, I just didn't know, I know we talked about different factors, but again, we know what client I am talking about, and that, the family has asked me to speak tonight, and I literally called them as on my way here, and the lawyer, and said, I guess I'm talking tonight, and they wanted me to ask, is it basically, I would ask not to change the name right now, and if we could ask the family to help have some input on the name, because he was part of this planning board and he did name it. I would ask that as out of respect to the family.
He didn't name it.
He did not? I was told that he did.
No, well, we talked to him.
I was told that was it.
This is
Back in the
back
day, yes.
15 years ago.
Right.
But we talked to him, John Montano and myself talked to him about it,
Mhm.
and we decided to call it the Science and Technology Overlay District.
And he put his land underneath that.
Well, we put the overlay
Right,
over
over
his
his
land.
land, correct. But
Right.
it's, so again, the family, again, they did not know about this tonight. I'm just asking for that, because he can't speak for himself at this time. So I'm just asking for that out of respect for the family that did not know about the meeting tonight, that's all.
Okay.
This is, as far as property,
And I think it's great.
property values,
This will help a ton.
this should only help him.
Oh, no, nobody's fighting what's here, just trying to understand the intent and trying to understand the rules, because we had talked about the housing for the 50 acres, we had talked about other things, but again, to get to the water line here, I wasn't sure how you would get to all of that property from Route 6 for most of this on the site, because there's so much wetland and it's
Yeah.
very, very wet to even get to this.
We're aware of that,
We-
and there's gotta be a way somewhere, somehow.
Right, and that's what we
Either
and
from
most of us have
Sanford
talked-
Road or Briggs Road, or from Route 88
It ha-
itself,
yeah, that's the only way I see.
or, yeah, me too, but tell the state. So
Yeah,
the state has other ideas, but if I were deciding how to get in there, I would get in between Briggs Road and Route 6 off of 88,
right.
because it's upland, it's easy access, and there's no wetlands disturbance.
Correct.
Yeah.
But again, I just wanted to try to understand a little bit more, and I'll go and visit the board and get this tomorrow.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment on it?
Yep.
So, the way I look at this only adds to the property, doesn't take away.
100%.
And what it does by creating the zoning for multifamily, it will prevent a 40B to come in that we have, they come in with a friendly lip and negotiate with us, but if they could also apply to the state and just stuff something down, and they could, if we don't have if we have the zoning, now we can work with them, it's a lot better. be more friendly and become a partnership. So I think it's a plus.
I didn't think it was a negative when I read it this afternoon. I literally hadn't seen it because I came in for the short-term rental. And again, not a negative, as I said, just was trying to understand it a little bit more of where it came from and trying to explain that to the family.
And we're also, like we're doing, and we're providing in this phase 1 sewer is the backbone for the whole community. So eventually it's gonna branch off into those neighborhoods and like around the Watuppa Pond, and there'll be other areas where they can access this. And, you know, it'll be a longer term plan, but that land sat there for a long time. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, we're trying.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Louise Gerard, 27 Harrison Street in Westport. Now you have, that was all the pro, now we have the anti. I live in the North End. I am 100% opposed to almost all of this. I moved to Westport to be in a rural area. I want to keep it a rural area. The school systems are pretty overloaded right now. We certainly do not need more buildings, more apartments, more people. I like driving down Route 6 and seeing I like seeing the forest, I like seeing the woods. I want to keep it the way it's been. If you want to build more businesses and stuff like that, please go down Main Road. Go down someplace else. But we never hear about things happening in the South End. So people in the South End can keep their trees and their forests and not have neighbors. I'm horrified that you're taking away, you're making it everybody crowded together. What we've had for all these years, setbacks, etc., it's okay. But now you want to make the plots smaller so we can cram more people in. I am opposed to that. I am opposed to the water and sewage going down Route 6 because what that will do is help the businesses build up there. And so instead of having rural Westport, we will have a little Fall River. So I'm really opposed to this. I know a lot of my neighbors are. Unfortunately, you had a meeting way down here. I like it when you have the meetings at the library. It makes it a little bit more central for us. But it's going to cost regular people in Westport a lot of money so that some people can make a lot of money by building up along Route 6. I like to support the businesses in Westport that are already here. I don't think we need more businesses. If businesses want to build, go down Route 6 to Dartmouth, go to Fall River. Why we have to push this in Westport to make it a little Fall River as opposed to the countryside of Westport. I'm really opposed to that, and I know a lot of people are too. I know this will make a lot of money for some people, but it's not going to make money for me. It's going to cost me money. And the chairman had said that there's people in the North End who don't have, whose wells are polluted. Do you have a number, you know, rather than this, do you have like, how many people in North Westport have polluted wells?
Hundreds.
You know that for a fact?
Yes.
Okay. And then, that's not, do they all live along Route 6?
No, in the
No.
North End.
Right. And so now you're going to do down Route 6 to make up more businesses. But those 100 people with poison wells
Hundreds, plural,
have,
several hundred.
and they won't be able to connect to that for a long time.
Well, they won't be able to connect at all if we don't do this.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to answer that question because we actually we applied for a grant to where the water main was stopped, 30 plus years ago. The Macomber Loop that we're proposing to go into that neighborhood is to pick up water off that loop. But for the whole picture, you can't just put water in there, so that's why we have to put sewer and water. Now these neighbors of yours and neighbors of mine, right now, they have a water health regulation that's making them upgrade their septics. That's costing them way more than what this is, and it doesn't help anything about the clean drinking water. The major problem on Route 6 is the clean drinking water in all of these neighborhoods. And it, you know, we should have been doing little baby steps 35 years ago and extend the water main. I mean, we have public wells, and we identified a lot of these wells in the integrated plan. That was what, maybe 5-6 years ago? And, you know, we paid $200,000 to identify them. The regulation from the Board of Health's been putting these septics in and not doing anything for the water. So the only thing that, like in the south end, that will help with this total nitrogen loading is sewering the north end. And I understand what we're trying to do with the backbone coming down Route 6 is to create the backbone. But we also need a way to afford to pay for that. So some economic development of Route 6 to pay for that. And again, I'm behind you 100%. I don't want it to look like Dartmouth. I don't want it to look like Fall River. But we also have some studies, one that was just completed recently from Serpent, and one that was prior to, we're gonna try to get some more, we're getting another informational meeting out, and we're gonna get it in that end of town. We have a couple of different entities, business to business is working on it, the watershed's working on it, Buzzards Bay's working on it, the planning board's working on it, so that we can inform the people and basically explain what is happening right now, and if we don't do anything, what's gonna happen. You know, the DEP regulations that were coming down and everything, my whole focus on this is I wanna call it clean water for Westport. You know, the redevelopment of, and I keep saying the responsible redevelopment of Route 6. I don't want to destroy your neighborhood. You know, my grandchildren will be the 7th generation living in that neighborhood, and that's the last thing that I want to do. And that's why you should come to our meeting tomorrow night. That will be at the town hall for the infrastructure, and we're going to have some other people that are really going to help with the public awareness on what we're trying to do.
But why do you have to make everything smaller? You know, if you want to develop the north end, but yet you want to cram so many things in, you know, 150-foot frontage. Oh no, now it's going to be 100. You know, a setback this one.
So could I just interrupt? Do you understand where the area is that we're talking about?
Yes.
It's not in your neighborhood.
It's along Route 6.
It's off of Route 6. It's between Route 6, 88, Briggs Road and Sanford Road, in the middle. So you really...
And another unique thing about that area, so as they said, there's a lot of wetlands in it. So when you come in and what we just said about bringing this before the planning board instead of a special permit, and we have our regulations, I mean the stormwater stuff and all of that, this is gonna, whatever's developed up in there, we're gonna try to blend it into, like we keep saying, we wanna keep the rural character. I mean, that's 100% of what I wanna see.
This is the Stod area. It goes along Route 6, and it comes here. Briggs Road is here, Sanford Road is here, Route 6, 88. And really the developable part of this big parcel is over here. It isn't along here, although some of this could be developed better with the Stod versus what's available here. But this is mostly businesses already. And this is, you can't see it really from anywhere. And it's undeveloped. And one of Nicole's clients owns most of it. And he wanted to put in housing there years ago, but it was impossible to do at that moment. But, you know, I think this would be a good place for some of this development we're talking about, and to make the lots smaller is in here. It's not down here.
But why make the lots small?
He had 400 house plan lots approved for that area. That was at one point approved in this town. Just to let the town know that that was, and the family is not pursuing it.
Right, I
There
understand.
were 400 house lots, just so the town can put that on record.
When we say we're making the lots smaller, the lot requirement for this overlay district was 10 acres, not an acre and a half, 10 acres. And we're switching that to 5 acres. So that's bigger than anywhere else in town. And the setbacks are variable depending on what you're doing. So, and if it's close to the residential area, the setbacks are further. So,
I think one of the things we should do, pitch this to town meeting, is to show all the wetland areas, to see where you're going.
Ma'am, are you connected to the water now, or you're off? Are you connected to the water system now, or are you on a private well?
Private well.
Okay, so one of the other things that we're providing with this, so the first leg that came in 30-plus years ago was paid for by the DEP because of contamination coming from Resolve. So this water main in this section of town is going to be extended at no charge to everybody in that neighborhood. Currently, right now, if you need to drill a new well, or if you're off a dug well, the biggest problem with the nitrogen is the people on the dug well. I mean, the one next to the Macumber Loop had 2 close wells to it, but they were artesian wells, and it was below the more stringent Board of Health regulation. But that's not what our major problem is up there. In your neighborhood, the problem is PFAS contamination. And it's historical. The septic's concentrated in small areas, the areas that were the Westport factory. I mean, the Kleinfeld Integrated Water Plan identified all of those areas. And we can't ignore that. We have to move forward with that. Now, the other thing that's also going to happen is we're negotiating the contract with Fall River to supply us the water. We're at a threshold now. The Macumber Loop will bring us to a water usage which will lower the rates. So not only will we provide you water for free, the expansion will make the water cheaper. And that's...
So there's not going to be a water fee?
You'll be charged for using the water.
Right.
Well, like what we're talking about, the betterment and like the cost of running the sewer and water in. So we're gonna provide water service in front of your house for no cost to the resident, not the business, the resident. So like now, if your well goes bad or your pump goes bad, you're gonna have to pay for it yourself. And a well right now is like $15,000 to put a well in. So now they'll put a connection in front, and this is going to be actually grant money for there's going to be ways for seniors to have that connected. Right now in Fall River they have a PFAS grant where they're removing all the lead surfaces that are known. So they're going from the street to the meter in the house, removing this lead surface, and this is because of PFAS contamination. Lead pipes will cause contamination in the pipe for zero cost. Fall River, I don't know the amount of the grant, but they've just implemented it this year, and it's happening. You know, unfortunately for Westport, when it was put in, they should have been trying to get grant money to extend this all along, so you would have already had water. You know, and it's really unfortunate that it's taken this long. But this is a plus for you, and I really don't want to see. I want to see more of the type of businesses that we have. I mean, one of the things is you get the car lots. So the car lots, the reason they're car lots is because that's all the owner of the property could do with it. But now, you know, like you want to go out to breakfast on a Sunday morning, there's no place to go. You got to wait in a line, and there'll be places like that. I'm not looking to have Applebee's show up over here, but some more mom and pop restaurants and eateries. You know, like we used to have McRae's Clam Shack down the road. You know, I mean, it could add a nice little drive-in Clam Shack place. You know, this is Westport. Those are the types of things that we can have over there. You know, right now, Lickety Splits, the ice cream, that's a public well that has a contamination problem. And that's one of the reasons I believe we might have the answer tomorrow night, the town administrator, on how much money for the Macumber Loop grant that we just got for water. And they're supposed to tell us this month, but I'm hearing like $4 million to extend that water in. And that's why we're going to be able to, we want to keep doing this every year to solve that problem. But we can't do it without the backbone. So we're going to have some responsible development on Route 6, but we need people like you to come in when it's going to come before the planning board for the permits. So they're going to come in, and that's when you're going to say, no, I don't want this Amazon thing over here, you know, a FedEx transfer station, you know. those are the things that you'll be able to prevent. And I'm very glad that you came tonight. I remember you from when we were at the library. And tomorrow, we're gonna be at 6:30, we're gonna be in the selectmen's room. And we're gonna schedule something else from that, from business to business, to educate you. Like I said, we got the watershed, we have Buzzards Bay. They're trying to get some informational stuff together to get out to you people in the neighborhood and explain it. I think tomorrow, Corinne's probably gonna have some good stuff for us to explain to you all the benefits. You know, because we not only, to win at the ballot box, we need you. You know, just like we're gonna need the people in the south end, that, you know, you said, no, put it down Main Road. But we gotta show to the people in the south that the environmental benefit of fixing these neighborhoods is gonna help them in the overall health of the river. I mean, we've come a long way, and that's why we don't have the DEP breathing down our neck, because we've been planning this and moving forward. And it's just it's a plus, but we do need you people to come out and ask these questions.
Could I add to what Manny said? When you talked about the rural character of Westport, and specifically the north end, I think everyone here on the planning board understands that Westport is by and large a rural town. And we here on the planning board do our best to protect that, despite the fact that night after night we hear subdivision after subdivision, because there's tremendous development pressure. And we need enough, we try to achieve a lot of goals because we want Westport to be a wonderful community, not just for us, but for our kids. So what does that mean? It means that you need jobs for our kids, not on the car lots that Manny talked about, but jobs that might be located in a science and technology corridor. Jobs for the future, not car lots, but jobs here in Westport. Certainly it's a farming community and a fishing community, but there are other jobs as well. And so if we can attract those, where would you put them? Well, there are some places like Route 6 or Main Road that are business districts. They already have a lot of businesses. And that's where, because that's where businesses are, density makes sense. And density on Route 6 and density on Main Road doesn't detract from the rural nature of the North End or the rural nature of Westport. Density on those specific areas makes sense. We want people in Westport to be able to have water they can drink, because that's a basic right to have water you can drink. And there are 1,000 wells in Westport that are contaminated. That isn't what we should have in Westport, in the North End, the South End, any part of Westport. So we have infrastructure that we need to provide. We don't want septic systems or cesspools that are polluting the rivers, East Branch and West Branch, that define our town. We have infrastructure that we've got to do, and unfortunately it costs a lot of money, so we've got to figure out how do we pay for that. So these are the problems we're trying to solve. The select board's trying to solve it, the planning board's trying to solve it, and it's going to take all of us to figure out how do we do that. But we all know we're a rural community. We all know that we want housing to be affordable so our kids can afford to buy a house in our community, that they don't have to go, you know, to North Carolina or Iowa to live. But we, you know, we've had the same feelings you do.
But I live there,
How long have you lived there?
50 years.
Yeah.
And my
So-
great-grandmother and my great-great-grandmother were both born in Westport.
So I'm the same. So my grandmother grew up in the 20s on Union Avenue, corner of Union and Forge. So, you know, the story is about, they did have a car to go to Fall River, but most people didn't have cars back then. And you have those villages. You have Railroad Park, and you have the Westport Factory, and we got the Macomb Loop. And we went over this with Senator Rodericks in the Selectman's office earlier in this week. And, you know, he was raised, and his father was born in the house over there. So, you know, I had the stories from my grandmother of taking a horse and sleigh in the winter to visit her grandparents in Little Compton. So, in the trolley car going down Route 6 and all that stuff. So I envision Route 6 for those neighborhoods, to come out of those neighborhoods and get the things that they need and go to, you know, we said about jobs, but what about the young entrepreneur that wants to own a restaurant?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of business I wanna bring into your section of the neighborhood. I don't want to lose any of those, what I call the North End villages for residences. I want to keep them here for our seniors and for our first-time home buyers, our kids, our grandkids. And the only way we can do that is with clean water. We need to do that. And we have to, unfortunately, there'll be some more development. And the Gateway District is kind of like, it already has that type in it. But believe me, they stopped it at that point after '88. We need you people to come in, my neighbors, and present this stuff. And when they're developing something on Route 6 over that way, and the planning board has it in front of them, you need to come in and say, hey, no, this is what the bylaw says. This is what we're trying to do with the look and the facades on this and the traffic. And we also have, you know, Big Brother coming down on redoing Route 6.
But you can understand our fears.
Oh, I have the same feelings, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. I don't know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Board, move on?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Next up is adding a definition for the assisted/independent living facilities section. This has caused some difficulty with some applications that have come forth to the planning board, that there was no definition for congregate living as it applies to assisted independent living facilities. And so we need to have that definition in there to clarify some issues. So what that's proposed to be is a shared living environment that combines housing and supportive services, where residents share one or more common facilities, including but not limited to kitchens, dining areas, bathrooms, and recreational, cultural, personal care, or social service facilities. Examples of supportive services include transportation, healthcare provision, and laundry and meal services. Each resident must have their own bedroom. And I will mention, this is assisted and independent living facilities are for senior housing.
So if you needed independent living or assisted living and you're 40, you can't go there?
Well, this is just for the independent living facility section. So this would just apply to, there's that section in there that says in an independent living facility, which is age restricted, that you have to provide congregate living arrangements.
Right.
But it doesn't say what those are.
Okay. So each resident must have their own bedroom? So a couple has to have 2 bedrooms?
Well, it's the only way to have a successful marriage. Sorry. You dished that one up, Jim.
Yeah.
But shouldn't we change that?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
sure.
can change that, yeah.
I think we strike each and just say, and then capital R, residents must have their own bedroom.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's
No?
good.
Any comments?
No, this addresses a problem that we need to fix.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next up is rezoning the unrestricted district to the residential agriculture district. It's outlined in yellow on the map up here, the unrestricted district. What's required of the zoning bylaws to remove all references to this district from the text. And so the planning board is proposing to rezone this area because the permitted uses in the unrestricted district, there's a lot of industrial uses that, that one could potentially apply for. And the planning board has found that those aren't appropriate with how this area is currently developed. And it's not compatible with other critical natural features in this area as well. So the area is mostly residential. There's some agriculture, some undeveloped lands, and there's quite a bit of wetlands in there as well. And so, but the point is that rezoning to this district is that it's not going to create non-conforming uses. Secondly, there's an aquifer protection area. You can see that it's in the hatched blue on this, or the diagonal blue lines on this map. So obviously it's not really appropriate to have industrial uses where people are sourcing their drinking water. And finally, this area, I identified Bread and Cheese Brook on this map, and it's considered to be a nitrogen impaired waterway. This is all part of some of the other initiatives that we're doing to improve the health of the Westport River watershed. And so lower impact uses such as residential and agriculture are seen as preferable to more intensive land uses that could introduce sources of pollution to the Westport River.
This I think is just sort of addresses a legacy from the original adoption of zoning in which they left an area in town that was unrestricted. That is, there are no limits on uses or activities, and to directly address Ms. Mullins' comments about here's a place to we're really essentially lowering the density here and keeping green space in the right in the heart of the North Westport neighborhood.
And some of these roads that are off Route 6 do go into this area, so part of the neighborhood up there is in this district, which is...
But is an unrestricted district something where you can do anything?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
More or less, yeah.
So you could have Houston, you could build a 40-story building.
Junkyards, you could do
Yeah.
any of that kind of stuff that, sort of the orphan uses that, need someplace to hide, like.
Yeah.
Adult entertainment? Or,
Mining, heavy industry,
Scrap
take
yard.
your pick, yeah.
Yeah, it must have come, when they put the zoning in, they had most of the town under residential and agricultural use. And then they devised areas where there's business. But then they must have said, well, we need, like you just said, a catch-all area. I don't know, a place to put
I
it.
think it's probably a reaction against zoning.
Well,
So-
they had no zoning, so
Right.
that's what it
Right.
was, and it was
Right.
existing. And I don't know, it was probably before the Wetlands Protection Act.
Oh,
and everything
way
else,
before. Way before. Anyway, anybody want to comment on that?
I just found plans of unrestricted developments of proposed plans from back in the 60s on that property.
On that property
On
too?
those properties, yes. They had plans for industrial use, they had plans for subdivisions. They were little house lots, like, I think they were 40 by 40 house lots all up in there. They were all very small house lots. Most of them, they do not take wetlands into consideration. I have found multiple plans on that properties. I'm selling some of them right now that are fully wet. And they are, Land Trust does not want them, the Buzzards Bay Coalition does not want them. We have gone to them, and I will tell you that, but I have found plans that have been approved at the registry of house lots that small.
Were they ever recorded?
They were.
But hasn't the assessor combined them?
They're all combined now, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Moving on.
Yep.
Okay, this is somewhat a kind of a continuation of this district is very similar to the mixed-use science and technology overlay district. It's going to be called the Westport Gateway District. It will replace the underlying business district, so this won't be an overlay. And it'll be, we're not going to expand any of the boundaries of the existing business district either. So it's that area highlighted on pink in this map between Fall River and Route 88. Will provide additional development potential for new residential and commercial investments, particularly, as has been noted several times, when the town sanitary sewer extension is developed. So this slide gives an overview of the Westport Gateway District and what it is intended to do. And so it's intended to create a new zoning district that will enable development to take advantage of the increased capacity provided by sanitary sewer, as I said, and also the Mass DOT upgrades on Route 6 that are coming down the pipeline. The district is intended to provide more flexibility than the current business district and also give an update to the land uses that are allowed to enable contemporary land uses in that district. So this is the actual purpose section of the Gateway District. Again, it's to provide flexible development and redevelopment opportunities, emphasize pedestrian experience, and allow for, I guess I said economic development opportunities, said that already. This, and then section 5.4.2 just establishes that the zoning map does define the boundaries of the district. This section establishes that the planning board will be the special permit granting authority for permits and for permits in this area, and that the bylaws in section 2.6 that's the enabling text that allows the planning board to review special permits. Additionally, the planning board may waive submission standards upon determination that they're not necessary for the type or the scope of the proposal. Applicants must submit forms, plans, and necessary legal documents for review by town council. And they also have to submit copies of all covenants, easements, Conservation Commission requirements, and so on that apply to that property. Next, there's going to be, I'll provide an overview of the uses allowed in this district. So specific types of uses, and one thing to note, and this kind of come up earlier when we were talking about short-term rentals, is that specific types of uses that may not be listed in the next slide, but they will fall under a more general category would be allowed in the district. So this is also the same as what was proposed in the mixed-use science and technology overlay district. And an additional element of flexibility is that if one of the categories that an applicant wants to apply for doesn't really fit with anything listed in the table of uses, and the planning board says, no, this is not a permitted use, you could appeal to the zoning board of appeals for them to review that use. So as we submitted this to the to the select board, many of the uses here would be considered by special permit, That includes residential uses like inclusionary housing, which is 10 or more dwelling units, large-scale retail, restaurants, entertainment, hotels, so on and so forth. Small-scale retail like financial institutions, banks, things like that, daycares, funeral homes, and retail bakery would be permitted by right. One thing I'd like to suggest to the planning board is that some of these uses, in fact, you could do all of them too, as was recommended in the mixed-use science and technology overlay district, is to have them reviewed by site plan and not by special permit. We can go over some of the uses I might recommend for that. I would say inclusionary housing, open space residential development, food service and establishment, lodging and hospitality, theater/entertainment venues, professional, medical, and corporate office, and personal service establishments. I think all of those could be reviewed by site plan approval, especially when you're trying to use rezoning as a means to attract economic development. The special permit process can be a little bit scary, especially in a market that hasn't been tested before by other developers. Finally, there are a couple of uses I think should be added to this table of uses. I think drive-through establishments should be considered a special permit if they're allowed at all, and I think we should also incorporate bed and breakfast and short-term rental by right, as was we had talked about earlier. And I think in the business district right now, kennels are allowed by right, and I think that should be carried over as well.
So aren't drive-throughs already allowed in the business? Oh, it's in the business district, not this. I'm sorry.
Right.
So, no, I would be in favor of at least the open space being by site plan approval instead of special permit, because we haven't had much luck with special permit.
Right.
And if we did, I would even consider doing it by right if we have enough safeguards in the bylaw itself. So SPA means site plan approval as opposed to SP?
Yeah, we would list them as SPA, PB, none of which are, none of these uses are listed as site plan, and I think it would be beneficial if part of the goal is to attract economic development, to have more uses that are by site plan, because it's a more defined process.
Right. I don't see maybe the assisted living and / continuous care. Well, why don't we say assisted living and independent living like we have other places? Or do you want to?
Yeah, it does say C section 9.1, so we should use the same title.
Yeah. But I think that should still be cited up with special permit. But how do you anticipate the inclusionary housing? Because I don't think the inclusionary housing bylaw had been drafted to be a standalone authorization to do anything, that it was something that went on top of regular subdivision.
It's interesting because the inclusionary housing section is considered in the land use table. And so it's called out as a land use. I think someone could theoretically submit an application under the inclusionary housing section, and we would be obligated to review it. But to answer your question, in this circumstance, it would be reviewed under, you know, the whole series of development criteria that are established in the Westport Gateway District.
And I think most of these, you know, the medical office buildings, corporate office, medical, you know, medical outpatient, you know, I think those are the kind of uses that lend themselves to site plan review. And you know, and this is really where we want to attract these kinds of uses in, right off of the interstate. You know, there's a bus route on Route 1, on Route 6, there's, you know, that bus route will connect to eventually to the terminal of the commuter rail. This is where we'd like to have these uses, and I think this, rather than making them a conditional use, that is a special permitted use, we make them allowed uses subject to site plan review. Just to make sure that we don't get something built that doesn't work well.
Right, I agree. There's nothing that calls out to me here that needs a special permit,
Right.
except for the assisted living and independent living. But I don't know what everybody else thinks.
But I think this is consistent with the kind of planning that we should be doing for, you know, for the town.
So Jim, you're saying the only ones that you would recommend be by,
Special
that have-
permit.
yeah, are
Actually, the number 4 also, the convalescent nursing home facilities. Because I think we want to have some input of what this thing really looks like,
right.
how it functions.
What about the commercial uses section, Jim? What are your thoughts there?
They all look okay to me.
And I have a lot of bakeries, I like that.
Well, in the lodging and hospitality, when we approved the additional motel up there, was that by special permit or just site plan approval?
I don't know.
It was just before your time.
I think that was a site plan.
I think it was a site plan. I don't think it was a special permit, because we don't have anything that calls for it. And I don't think we should call for it here.
Yeah, hotel was by site plan. So that, when I listed off some of these uses, when I was talking about the contents of the slide, I called some of them out specifically to maintain that continuity of the use type, so that if they're a special permit in the business, if they're a site plan in the business district now, they should be a site plan
Right.
in
Not a
the
special
West Park
permit,
Gateway
right.
District.
Right.
Or, excuse me, site plan.
So, Jim, what did you say about financial institutions? Did you say anything with a drive-through should be a site plan?
Yeah.
So then financial institutions?
Well, we have a site plan, we have a drive-through bylaw. Maybe we just refer to that.
So it shouldn't just be a Y then for financial institutions?
Well, that's.
Well, we've had that here across
Yeah.
the street. And
So I suggested
so we
that.
had to do the drive-through bylaw as well as, it wasn't a special permit.
I
Well,
said-
maybe the drive-through was a special permit.
Yeah, I think drive-throughs are a special
Special
permit in
permit.
the business district. So that's why I said to add that as a use in here, drive-throughs more generally as a special permit, so that way, you know, if it's a restaurant, that has a drive-through, it has to get a special permit. If it's a bank, it has to get a special permit.
So that would change, that if it's a financial institution, it'd be as use allowed by special permit.
That could still be allowed, and then if you had the drive-through, the special permit requirement would kick in.
Yeah, but what's a financial institution without a drive-through? There is no such thing.
Brick and mortar standalone.
No, there isn't. Hasn't been one in 40
Wait,
years.
do we wanna require if there's a standalone bank that they have to get a
There's
special
no such
permit?
thing as a bank without a drive-through. I mean, just put it by special permit, there's no such thing.
So site plan approval or special permit? I mean,
Well, whatever a drive-through requires, because banks have drive-throughs.
right,
That's like
a
redundant.
special permit. And we do it by special permit because we want to make sure the distance from the in and the out.
Yeah,
On
no,
the
I
street.
get it. I just wouldn't say it's as of right because they have drive-throughs. So to say that they don't have drive-throughs is just nonsensical.
And another thing that this does is there's a couple of additional things it does. One is it separates this business district from the general business district in the town. And it puts in this business district, or this, now the Gateway District, it puts greater densities and greater uses, which is a good thing to distinguish it. It also, the second thing it does is it solves that sort of openness in our current zoning that says in the business district, there's no limitation on height. There's a limitation of height in the business district, but it only applies to residences in business district. Oh, that's what people think it says.
Right. Yep.
I think if we tune this up for, again, making site plan reviews, site plan approval, rather than special permits, except for those few that we agree should have a special permit, I think we are miles ahead here. I hope there's some clear, simple way to explain this to the town meeting.
You looking at me?
Yeah, you wait till 9:30, right? And then Jim says, we have some technical amendments. I'm not gonna bother to read them. All in favor, say aye.
Right.
And it goes right through.
So next are manufacturing uses, which I think might need a little bit more of a fine-tooth comb than just saying site plan for all of these. But as is up here on the screen, all these uses would be by special permit for manufacturing uses. There would be some uses that would be exempt: agriculture, religious uses, and nonprofit education. Then there would be some accessory uses that would be allowed: raised solar panels, battery storage and parking areas, electric vehicle charging stations. And then mixed uses would be special permit. And so, like the previous slide, I think some of these can be changed a little bit. I think site plan, or mixed uses could be by site plan. Wholesale bakery could be by site plan. Research and development, site plan. Artisanal manufacturing, that could probably be site plan too.
Yeah, I think most of those can be special permits, but I would not, I mean, it can be site plan review, but if we had a bio-manufacturing user, we want to make that by special permit.
Mhm.
You need to know
What they're
what
doing.
Yeah.
what it is they're
Right.
making. And they're used to being in that pot.
So light
Besides, they're all up in Kendall Square, Cambridge.
So
biomanufacturing.
with these uses, do we have to define any of them? Like light manufacturing, what is that?
They are defined in section 3 of the
They are,
zoning bylaws.
okay.
And this bylaw would also give the planning board discretion if, you find that it's a similar sort of use that would fall under the category of light manufacturing, then it would be permitted by site plan, as Bob has said. Okay, I'll move on. Okay, so there are some standards for consideration of, this will have to be cleaned up, special permit, should be special permit and site plan. But in order to approve a project in the Westport Gateway District, the planning board has to determine there are adequate roadways and vehicular circulation, that parking is accommodated according to the sections, the bylaw section that'll be in the next slide. And parking will be restricted out of the front yard setback, so it would be required to be in the side or rear of the structure. And it'll be encouraged that applicants consider shared parking arrangements across different use types in the development. I think one thing the planning board could consider here is to have discretion to reduce the minimum number of required parking spaces should you determine that there's no detrimental impact by reducing those parking spaces.
So we would encourage shared parking, but how about shared access?
Shared parking and access?
Yeah. And do we need to say in here that we require copy of the curb cut from Mass Highway?
Can we require that with the application?
So,
I mean, not with the application, but during the process, I would think.
I don't know if we could theoretically hold up a site plan approval because they haven't submitted a Mass DOT curb cut application.
I think we could, but I don't think we could deny an application that they have applied for the curb cut and haven't gotten it yet.
Mm-hmm.
If anything substantial happens here, they're gonna be connected to the sewer. Or it's not, any substantial user is probably not gonna come here unless the sewer is there.
so the thing on the curb cut, so, and I've submitted it to the planning board before, they probably have a copy of it, and actually, Nicole in permitting will come out and speak with us to explain to us what the criteria is. So basically, we can, as the building department is responsible for building permit. So Mass Highway does not want, Mass Highway wants us to approve the plan before they submit for the permit. So the plan, the requirement of the applicant is that the plan is approved by the planning board or the building department. So, once that happens, if we approve a plan, which we have in the past, on Route 177, that didn't meet Mass Highway standards, and because they were, actually the planning board, because the building department wasn't doing it, pushed it forward, and they made changes to our approved design. So there's been some talk on that. We do need to make a clarification on who needs to, because it should be the building inspector. On his permit, it says must abide by all local, state, and federal permits. So this is a state permit that the only requirement of him is to make sure that he applied for it after we gave him. It doesn't stop him from working or anything, but they go at their own peril at that point. So we have had a problem on that not happening, and that's part of our problem on the redevelopment of Route 6. And so we gotta figure some way to make sure that that does happen.
Okay. Did you want to say something else, Jim?
No?
This is currently the parking table, and it's kind of a lot. So that the specific uses on the land use column correspond with parking requirements. That given certain criteria, there are so many parking spaces required per whatever unit of that criteria. I think just for making this a little bit easier to look at and administer, I think we could condense some of these into larger categories, and then in some instances where something doesn't necessarily fit within that category, the planning board does have, as we discussed in the last slide, would have discretion to reduce those parking requirements should it be requested from the applicant in their application.
Where did you get these figures?
These figures were provided from our consultant who worked on this project.
Can you explain one to me? If you go down towards the bottom,
Sure.
a restaurant sit down, 5 plus 1 for every 3 seats. So we have like 2 cars for every 1 seat, as I read that.
Yeah, you would have, so you would have a base number of parking spaces, so you would have 5 in that instance. And then for every 3 seats, you would need an additional 1 parking space.
Oh, I get it, all right. So it's 1 seat for every 3. And
1
it's
parking space.
1 parking space for every 3 seats, but you start with 5.
Right.
That makes more sense,
So
okay.
if you had
I get
a
it.
5-seat restaurant, you would need 20 spaces, which is quite a bit.
No, wait a minute, then I'm not.
No, the way you interpreted it.
So if you have an 18-seat restaurant, you have 6
Right,
seats for the 3,
It'd be
plus
more
5.
like 7.
Yeah.
Example.
Yeah. No, wait a minute. Make it divisible by 3. If it's 18-seat restaurant,
It's 6.
You have 6
Six,
spaces.
six.
You have
Six
11,
plus
you have 11,
Right,
11 spaces.
Yeah.
okay, that's what that means.
So
Okay.
the employees, so
Yeah.
if somebody comes, the employees have a place to park,
Yeah.
and then you have spaces for the customers.
Okay, all right, got it. That makes more sense.
Okay.
All right, loading areas in the development are required where necessary. They must be placed to the side or rear of the building. Utilities need to be placed underground where feasible, and the development must include adequate water and sewer services. Expanded buildings may be permitted if the planning board determines that the expansion is necessary for the proposed use. New buildings will need to have the architectural style and their uses approved by the planning board, and the planning board may determine a maximum build-out based on factors like water, wastewater, traffic generation, parking, and so on. Some of this language came from our consultant, and
Can I
I
ask
don't
a
know
question
if
on
some of these-
architectural style? Is that the same thing as having design review?
no, it's not a design review process. So it's actually the same exact design regulations that we have in the Science and Technology Overlay District. So
So,
it's not a prescriptive, you need to have so many cornices per wall area or anything like that.
Okay.
It's not that prescriptive.
okay.
So there are a couple of these that I really don't think are necessary. I don't think it should be up to the planning board to determine whether or not a new or expanded building is necessary. I think that's really the applicant's responsibility to determine that. And so I would recommend striking those. I would also recommend striking section G as well, just because the maximum build-out is already going to be determined by the other development standards in here.
Mhm.
So I don't think we need to have another
Yeah, I agree.
section calling that out. Okay, all developments are required to have a landscaped and/or fenced buffer area, and that's when they're adjacent to residential agriculture uses. Must include screening to a height of 6 feet. Noise generated on a property must be reasonable for the type of use and conform to the town's noise bylaw and DEP standards. Lighting must be limited to a height of 25 feet and operate in accordance with dark sky standards. And here I think the board could have a bit more of a defined standard for when, or for buffer areas. So establishing a buffer depth with the option to remove the buffer as necessary by planning board approval. Because right as it is in here, it's completely discretionary. So for example, the buffer area could be required to be accommodated with just in the setback area. So in this district, that would be 10 feet.
So with the lighting exterior, the exterior lighting part, with our subdivision regulations, we require a photometric plan of how much light spills from the site onto adjacent properties. Is this J sufficient?
Let me check our site plan rules and regulations.
Yeah, but I think also it ought to be consistent with the height issue of 25 feet. Should be consistent with the start.
Which is 20.
20, yeah.
Okay.
One or the other.
The start allows, if you increase the setback, it allows 5-story, 75-foot buildings.
Yeah, we're talking about height
Lights.
of light
Of the
fixtures.
lights.
Oh.
Of the-
Oh, I'm sorry. And I think it should be consistent. And
The
almost the lower the better.
Yeah.
Jim, the site plan standards do not require a photometric plan, so that's something
I'm
that
not
could
talking
be.
about the site plan, I'm talking about our subdivision rules and regulations require.
Right, I said I wanted to check the site plan rules and regulations to see if it's already
Okay.
required in there, but it's
It's
not.
not.
So that's something that could be included here. Okay. Here's the intensity requirements for this district. Developments have to meet the following standards: 40,000 square feet of lot area with 25,000 square feet of uplands.
So you have it crossed out anyway, but it was wrong. I mean, the current is 60,000 square foot, not 80. It doesn't matter.
Okay. You're right with what's on the screen here, 40,000.
Yeah, 40,000.
Minimum frontage of 100 feet, 75 feet of lot width required. Maximum front yard setback of 20 feet, side yard setback of 10 feet, rear yard setback of 6 feet, which increases to 10 if next to a residential agricultural zoned parcel. Florida area ratio of 0.4, maximum lot coverage of 65%, and you cannot exceed 3 stories in height. There's one thing that I might suggest adding to this section, and that's including a residential density maximum. So if you do the math on the minimum lot size, and thinking about including parking and the structure, you can get probably by default around 21 or 22 dwelling units an acre. So I think 15 would be more in line with what is already proposed in the mixed-use science and technology overlay district.
Do we want to make it the same, or do we want to have something different?
Yeah, but we can live it. I think it would be, you really need to have the perfect lot to achieve anything like that density in 3 stories. But I'm happy to leave it as it is, or if we.
You're saying that it's 3 stories, it's 5 acres, and you could get, what do you say the math allows you?
Here you could, in the West Park Gateway District, you could probably get 21 to 22 dwelling units an acre by just like having no density regulation by default.
You
So
could get
factoring in
21 an
parking,
acre.
the height,
With the
Yeah.
small setbacks.
right. And this is kind of just back of the envelope math, so this is not.
So you're saying you could put 100 on the lot, on a 5-acre lot? And you're suggesting, do we want to limit it to 15 when the lot could have 100?
15 dwelling units per acre.
Right. And the maximum, and the acreage could be 5 acres, or it could be more.
Could be anything.
Oh, it could be anything?
Yeah.
Yes. There's no limit on the maximum.
It's not like the stod where there's.
Where you're
So-
starting with a minimum lot size.
In the gateway, there are a couple of, most of them have very wet backs, but there are a few big lots.
So, all right, sorry. The density would be measured in what, per acre or what?
Per acre. So what we had in the mixed-use science and technology overlay district is 15.
15.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Keep it
that's the
consistent.
question. Do we want to make it consistent? Do
Yeah.
we want to make it different?
Or you could just do nothing at all, and as Bob said, if you had the perfect lot, you could
Yeah.
21 or 22 dwelling units.
If someone had a great plan and came in and this was the density, it's okay. I mean, there isn't, what the character of that is in 3 stories, it probably wouldn't change much whether it was 15 or 18 or, you know, you're not gonna, it's all gonna look about the same.
It's like Lincoln Park. That kind of structure.
Yeah.
We can leave it. I just
It
want.
would have
I
to
just
be
want,
like that to be that dense,
Yeah.
because 2 stories would
Right.
be half that density.
I just wanted to bring that up and, you know, be transparent that even though there's no density, density figure in the requirements, there is sort of a default density.
So what is
that
the
you can
height
achieve.
of the Hampton Inn and the other hotel? Do we know? Somebody should know, since we just
It's-
approved it. It seems like. So, I mean,
It's about
would this
it's 4
prevent that?
stories.
Is it 4 floors?
Yeah.
Hmm?
I know Lincoln Park's 3, I think.
Lincoln Park is 3, but the hotel, I thought, is it 4 stories?
Shame on us. Nicole, do you know?
I think it's 4.
4?
It's 4. I'm looking at it on Google Maps right now. It's 4 stories.
The new one or the old one?
The new one.
The old one's 3, right?
The old one is 3, yes.
So
Mark,
that's-
did you
that's
ever
good.
read a book called Defensible Space by Desmond Morris?
I think way back,
Yeah, he
yeah. but I-
talked about what makes a space safe. And he said if you have 7 units or fewer around a common lobby, then if someone comes into the lobby, they will be challenged can I help you? Are you looking for someone in particular, which is safe? If it's more than 7 units on that lobby, then people in the apartment building will assume they know somebody, and they will not challenge the person in the lobby. So from a standpoint of design, you don't want more than 7 units emptying on a lobby, because you want people challenging people who come into a lobby. So if you had 21 units in a building, you want to have 3 lobbies.
Yeah, that's interesting. How he came up with 7, I don't know, but.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it makes sense when you think about it.
So we want to stick with the default, what it kind of naturally defaults to?
Yeah, I think Bob's point is, let them come and show us what they're doing.
Right,
So do we want to restrict it to 45 feet and 3 stories? Or should it be the same as the motel, which is 4 stories and probably 60 feet?
In the same way that we're carrying over land uses in a business district that are already permitted or, by site plan, I think we could pull over the existing
I think
regulations.
the 3-story here where it's likely to be, well, this is a great big area. Essentially, the developable portions, a big chunk of this is wet and conservation ownership. So it's really likely to be near the street as opposed to in the sod where it's likely to be way back from the street. Right. So I think here 3 stories is probably the right answer as to what the character is.
This is going to be a 3-night town meeting.
We're almost there. Less than 10 seconds. So Gateway District will have some additional landscaping standards. Summary of those are requiring the natural state of land to be maintained to the greatest extent practicable. Green strip that's required in buffer areas, 50% of which must be evergreens. Alternatively, fencing can be used for a portion of the screening, but it must be done so with landscape plantings. Every 35 feet within the buffer area, a shade tree is required, although tree planting is not practical in the development, shrubbery can also be used. Landscape areas must be mulched or grassed, which grass is preferred. Existing on-site trees should be preserved where possible. Shade trees, when they're installed, need to be at least 2-inch caliber and reach a height of 20 feet within 10 years. Evergreen plantings must be spaced 5 to 10 feet apart, and these standards can be reduced upon recommendation of an arborist or other similar professional.
So, evergreens. Most people use arborvitae, and I don't know what the deer population is in Northwestport, but
They love them.
they eat them. So, do we need to call out evergreens?
They don't eat the green giants.
They don't need giant.
Green giants, they don't. I have about 100 of them planted on the screen.
I haven't planted it like mine, but
Green giants?
yeah,
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah,
Must
they
have
will.
hungry deer.
They will.
when they're
particularly if-
hungry.
When they're hungry, they'll eat anything. So
That's right.
they eat my rhododendrons. so that they all start about this high now.
I guess I have enough hostas that they like
Yeah.
that better than normal.
But, I mean, do we really need to call out evergreens? Because I don't know. To me, maybe there's other choices.
So the evergreens are called out because they'll maintain a year-round screen
Yeah,
If they're there.
if they're there.
I think this is all way too detailed, but,
Yeah.
but I would, you know, I think maybe it's, you know, I think we, you know, I think we should see, if we have site plan review, we should see landscaping plans. And this is way more detailed, but, you know, should there be the evergreen? Yeah.
yes, there should.
It probably should be a mix though.
Yeah,
You know. Trees, be good to plant some trees,
Yeah.
not just shrubs.
I agree with Manny.
I mean, that's one thing we gotta say about Donald Perry in Dartmouth. And the years in the past, we've hauled trailer loads out of Savannah's.
Well, yeah, it says a mixed,
Yeah, that's what it
Mixture
says,
of shade
containing
trees.
A mixture of shade trees, deciduous shrubs, evergreens.
Yep.
So it calls for a mixture.
Okay. Let's move on to architectural standards.
So like I said, these are the same standards that are in the STOD district. But an overview of them is that LEED certified buildings are encouraged. It's also encouraged to use materials like brick or stone. Buildings larger than 2,000 square feet must have an articulated facade. So you have to incorporate features like siding, pilasters, or windows for not more than a third of the length of the wall. Walls longer than 100 feet in height require a change in height. Rooftop utilities need to be screened so they're not visible at ground level, or at least located in a location where you can't see them at ground level. And you need entryways or porches at doorways.
I mean, not just the bare door. Not just the bare door.
Right. Yeah.
So it'll kind of eliminate like that white elephant we got out there right now in the Gateway District. That was supposed to give us landscaping. I
Yeah.
haven't seen anything.
Yeah, and have something that identifies the entrance.
Coastal.
This is, again, as I said, there are a number of things that are pulled over from the Science and Technology Overlay District. So this is more or less, this is the same thing. Requires that it states that the planning board can require a traffic study. And developments may be required to conduct a traffic study at the applicant's expense. And the study needs to evaluate the impact upon state and local roads, potential safety issues, morning and evening peak traffic projections, average daily traffic, conformity to established planning documents, if there are any documents outlining roadway standards or something like that, and any mitigation measures that might be necessary. All right, and in order for the planning board to approve the special permit, they must make findings that the proposal complies with the requirements of the bylaw, that there will be no undue impact upon noise, pedestrian and vehicular traffic, environmental harm, visual impact, and other criteria as defined by the bylaw, and conditions of approval may be opposed as the planning board determines them to be necessary as it applies to infrastructure and improvements, proposed uses, and performance guarantees. We'll just note real quick that it should be modified that the planning board may impose conditions of approval for and call out special permits and site plan approval, that it's not just all by special permit.
Michael, just to I was a little slow in commenting here, but in traffic study C, it says the planning board may not issue a special permit unless the mitigation measures achieve the LOS of C or greater. We've changed almost all of the uses, or many of the uses, to site plan approval. We should think about, either we say this applies only to those that we're doing special permits for, which could be okay, but if we want the standard, we should say shall not issue approval, something of that nature. It's just in the kind of sausage making work that we need to catch.
Yeah,
Right. I'm sorry, we can get back to.
Consultant review, so, as with any of the other applications that come before the planning board, the board may engage a consultant for peer review services. This is kind of standard boilerplate language. We do this for just about every application that comes forth. And that's it.
I didn't see anything on signage, which you had, or did I miss it? That you had in the STOD.
Are there signage regulations in the STOD?
Yeah, I thought it. Where did I see them? Section N, where are we? Paragraph N, performance standards, 6.6.7, number N, paragraph N. That's got signage. So it just,
Yeah, signage should make it in this.
should we add something on signage?
We'd have to have another public hearing for that. I think we'd have to have another public.
Really?
Yeah,
To do what?
to incorporate signage into here. I think it's substantive.
This is a public hearing, isn't it?
Yeah, but we'd have to rewarn it.
Yeah. Advertise it. I mean, remember that was a hot potato too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost something like if we're trying to get this stuff approved, we might have to visit that at a different
We don't
time.
want to go into.
I think that's why it was left out, so I can't remember where we left off with Russ, but I think that's one of the reasons why signage was left
Right.
out.
Right. So
But it's in the STOD, and that was already discussed in public hearing before then, I assume?
I would have to assume it was discussed when the stock was passed, I think.
Yeah.
The, anyway.
So back to 5.4.8. Action by the planning board. The planning board may grant a special permit for a proposed use where it makes the following findings, but aren't we, most of these things are not special permits, so.
Yeah, so I left all of the language here intact as it was sent to the select board.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to make it appear as if I was changing things,
Mhm.
you know, the changing what the select board had sent back to the planning board. So yeah, I'll tighten that language up.
I think this falls in the same category. You know, once we make the uses site plan review, then we need to put approvals in, and approvals would cover the site, the special permit. It's just that if the special permit becomes the unusual case, then we just need to substitute the word in here. it's still approvals that, the sense of this, it's an approval that, where it meets these findings. We still have to meet the findings to issue an approval. We just, if it isn't a special permit, it's a site plan approval.
Maybe you just say, may grant an approval
Yeah,
for the proposed use where it makes the following findings.
right.
Okay, any more comments on this?
So, I know Mark brought up something that was the third rail at one of the town meetings in terms of signs
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So, remind me, where are we? Did that just get shot down and we don't have a sign ordinance at all?
That's right.
And so we don't have it in any section of town?
No.
Okay.
Well, there's something about signs, but I don't, it's
There's
practically nothing.
Something about
and there's some limited sign standards in the Science and Technology Overlay District. There's a
So
handful
there's
of
some
them.
regulation in the science district?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, is there anything in the building code?
I wouldn't be the person to ask that one. I'm not sure.
So do we take an action on this, Michael, tonight?
On all of these we do.
We do, yeah, we need to. I
We
think-
still have one more.
Yeah, there's one more slide. But I think if anyone has, well, Jim, you're running the meeting, but before we move on to the next one, I think if anyone from the public has any comments.
I didn't think so.
Just want to make sure. Lastly is the minimum lot width standard. So the planning board is proposing to modify how lot width is considered to try to encourage more regularly shaped lots. So what is essentially being proposed up there is that the minimum lot width is 100 feet, and you have to carry that width back from the frontage to a depth of 200 feet.
So this is under the, so our minimum lot width for a standard lot is 150 feet, right?
Yep.
So the 100 feet is in the special bylaw for allowing less frontage for more area, right?
No, it's the lot width definition. Right now, we have 150-foot frontage, and then you look at the minimum width, it says 50 feet, and we get these god-awful shaped spaghetti lots and stuff.
Yeah.
And we're trying to create lots that have reasonable front yards and have building areas, so this is an attempt to, still 150 feet, still 60,000 square feet, but now you can neck down, but it's to 100 feet, you gotta carry that through the building area. So people would end up with, even if the house were 60 feet wide, it still would fit nicely on the lot.
Yeah, but it says the 100-foot proposed would have to extend from the frontage to a depth of 200 feet.
Right,
But the frontage has to be 150 feet.
right. So
So
we're not
what
talking
do you-
about, well, the
right,
frontage
start
isn't the
there.
width, the frontage is the frontage.
Yeah.
So it could, from what Bob was just saying, you have 150 feet. As you go back, you could narrow it down to 100 feet, and you have to carry that 100 feet, 200 feet from the frontage to where the house is.
Yeah. But you could start with
150.
150 and then just,
Then you go
yeah,
down to 100.
exactly, to 100. And then back.
Right,
Yeah.
which is better than what we have now, so,
So it'd be like a little, like a, I don't know.
like a key, sort of.
pedestal or something.
But I don't think we have many that are gonna do that.
And we also have that on curves and cul-de-sacs, how people, skew the lot lines, on the
Yeah.
curve. And so, yeah, there's 150 feet measured around the curve, but if you look at the lot width, it's,
60 feet.
50 feet wide.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's 150 feet around a corner,
Right.
and it's a pork chop.
I think this is something that is beneficial to producing, nicer lots.
We're trying to minimize the geometric lots, the
Yes.
pieces of spaghetti, the circles,
And then somebody else's frontage in front of the other lot.
Yep. Yes, that's right. It looks like your frontage is next door.
yeah.
Okay, so,
I have one question on this.
yes, please. Yeah.
Sorry. So I was waiting for the last one, sorry guys. One question on this. I saw many house lots that look abnormal like this because of wetlands, because of easements and frontage. So if you have a lot that's 350 feet by 175, you got 350 feet of frontage, but it's 175, according to this, you cannot build on it.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that.
350 feet.
Yep.
It doesn't go minimum back of one, so you've got a
Can't
minimum
go 200
frontage
feet
depth
down.
now of 200 feet now. Minimum depth of 200 feet for the lot. If the lot has 350 feet and not have the depth of 175, that is
No,
now not a buildable lot.
I understand the question.
So that's still 61,000 square feet, which is over 1.3 acres. We've got to watch the wording, because you're not just hurting those odd-shaped lots the way this is worded. So the way
I
that,
think if we get a plan like that, I'm going to approve the lot.
so that it's going to have to go for a special permit, right? Because sometimes those lots are made due to wetlands.
If you had a compliant lot that wasn't 200 feet deep, I would definitely not make them build a bigger lot. Why would I?
But you're saying that you're not, so the way this is written is so you don't want them to have 150 feet of front, and you don't want them to narrow down more than 100 feet.
Yep.
But sometimes they they go to 50 feet narrow, so they all have driveways, their own individual
Yep.
driveways, and get to a bigger lot in the back for privacy.
Yes.
So sometimes it looks odd on a plan, but
It
when you
doesn't
actually.
look just odd.
Oh,
It's
trust me,
terrible.
trust me, I've been doing it for 25 years here. I get it. You can drive them all day long with me if you want someday. But at the end, you understand why when you see the topographical way the land is, of why the people have been, and some of them have had shacks, houses, cottages in the back, and then they come to before you to have a lot approved. It's gonna hurt the locals long-term who wanna subdivide their lots. Just going to that again.
I get it.
Setbacks have not changed with this. It doesn't change it. It doesn't change the size of a driveway. It just doesn't look pretty. I don't think that's a way to approach it. It doesn't look pretty. I understand it, trust me. But again, when you think about what this really does, it really doesn't change what somebody does for a conforming lot.
It isn't about looking pretty. It's about creating neighborhoods that work. If we now agree with the handicap commission, if you have more than 5 lots, they have sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have sidewalks, you want houses that sit on the sidewalks. So we're thinking about really creating neighborhoods that work well and not, and I know we have a history of people have 2,000-foot long driveways in this town and they have beautiful homes.
Way back in the back.
I got it,
Hidden
I got it, but for the new development, I think we need to create lots that work well as little communities.
Well, and I think that's more for a subdivision, but I'm saying for an individual lot that is a person on, let's pick a road, let's pick Drift Road.
Yep.
And they have 390 feet of frontage, and they can only get 2 house lots, but they want to stagger one, and then they've got wetlands, and they want to cut it out and go and back to a lot, because they have wetlands in the front, will see that. You'll see that that has that narrow angle because they need to get around the wetlands. I think this hurts people like that wants to have a family lot or break off a lot for their children long term, who have always thought, I've got the frontage, I've got all of that, but that will hurt a family member who wants to give it to their kids. And you'll see a lot of plans come before you, is what I'm trying to say, with funky lots because of this. You'll get a lot more funky lots before it goes through in town meeting, I'll tell you that right now. When I saw this, I'm just giving you a heads up.
Yep.
This is.
We do.
I think this is trying to prevent the 9-lot subdivision, that every one of these lots does that, to create a 9-lot subdivision.
But I
Like
think
somebody-
once you get to a certain, I call it a cluster subdivision, there should be a cluster subdivision maybe by lot, not individual lots. If there's more than so many lots, maybe that's what you approve, but not maybe 2 or 3.
We have an open space bylaw. Guess how many people apply for it? Nobody. Because they know they've got a geometry quiz and they give us these odd lots and we're stuck with approving them. And we've got a cluster bylaw. We've got special, we've got, we try to.
The flexible frontage I see every day.
We try to
Every lot I
incentivize
saw.
all of that and people don't touch it.
The flexible frontage is, but it's also the wetlands, and then again, they can go to the state.
Yeah, and you know, you're absolutely right, and one by one, we see the character of Westport get eroded.
Oh, I'm from here, I know. I try to see.
And so what we're trying to do is prevent that.
But I think it's gonna be the individual.
Yeah, and you can come up with a hypothetical.
But I think this here, I know the intent, but I'm trying to say that it's not the developers who are looking at the 100 feet and all that. That's not a developer, because that costs them way too much money to do. This is an individual, these are families. That's what this is. The families are the ones who get creative and make those long roads because the developer can't afford to do that. That's basically, this is a local, this is not a developer. The developers do not put this much time and money into that. They want to be on the street and they want 5 lots on the street because they're not putting utilities and running all that. That's a family. Thank you.
Well, with A&Rs, despite what we say here, if somebody comes with an A&R plan with 150 feet of frontage in the requisite area in uplands,
We don't condition it.
we can't condition it, we can't say, well, it doesn't do that. We have to endorse it. So, I mean, if you're concerned about the A&Rs,
Right.
the A&Rs,
They beat this.
right,
And again, it's just that a lot of, I've gotten calls, I had somebody call me, I've got 500 feet of frontage and I've got 179 feet of depth. Nicole, what happens to me? I've got so much wetlands and all that, and I'm like, but I have a narrow little strip. And I'm like, but I have a neighbor that I could drive by, and you get all these scenarios, right? But if I look at that, the way it's read, that person really doesn't have a buildable lot, but they have 500 feet of frontage.
they already have the lot, right?
It's already broken off, but it's not, but again, it won't be, is that deemed buildable with not enough depth?
Well, as I said, if it's an A&R lot, if it's not part of a subdivision, you can do what you want. You can make the craziest looking lot you can, and we have no way of controlling that.
Yeah, you're talking about rat tails,
Right.
That's what they,
Right.
so that skinny, you have 150 feet of frontage on the
Right.
road, approved road, and then it narrows down to a narrow
We've
strip
got some
that goes
as
around
little as
wetlands
18
or around
feet
another
minimum.
lot,
They've
and
got-
then opens up in the back.
Yep, I've got 18 feet driveways, I've seen as narrow as that.
Right.
So, that's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what is your desire for the outcome of tonight's meeting?
I think we need to, how long do we have before we have to send these back? I don't think we want to go over them again, so.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to continue the public hearing, or are you okay with moving forward with the amendments as discussed?
Well, I'm okay with that. I mean,
Yeah, I, you know,
as long as you took notes on what we talked about.
Of course, and
Yeah.
we have minutes taken.
Yeah, I would close the public hearing and,
Second.
and is, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then, I think we get a last look once, we get the edits that we've discussed tonight.
And we can send it back to them the next time after we see the edit.
And then we get them to the to the Board of Selectmen so they can put the actual wording in the warrant.
Good.
Move to adjourn.
Bob, I'm gonna bring a couple of pictures tomorrow.
Second.
All in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.